Starling.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
Dr. Lecter.
Don't bother with the trace. I won't be on long enough.
Where are you, Dr. Lecter?
I have no plans to call on you, Clarice. The world's more interesting with you in it. So you take care now to extend me the same courtesy.
You know I can't make that promise.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Dr. Lecter. Dr. Lecter.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist, host of shows here in Los Angeles, California, and occasionally an actor. And I'm super excited for us to talk about this film. I wish the circumstances were better, but I'm excited to welcome one of our dearest friends.
Yes.
The man who hugs like nobody else. He's an incredible writer. He wrote on Without a Trace, right? Is that right? On Without a Trace?
Yep.
And you've written on numerous animation shows now, and you're considered a genius, a rocket scientist. Is that correct on that? Am I correct on that? Certified? Certified rocket scientist? Yeah. But like last night we got a text from this gentleman, and he was like, hey, I saw you guys were going to talk about this film. It is my favorite film. Can I come on the show? Steve and I couldn't say no. And so please welcome to the Cine-Files the amazing, talented, incredibly intelligent Dave Rapp.
Thank you very much. Wow, I was worried I wasn't going to get the same sort of intro that you gave to Yuri, but that was almost up there.
Listen, I like the people that come on the show. I love the people that come on the show.
This is why I passed the task of introducing to you, because I think you do it so much better than I do it.
Well, I've just been doing it for so long,
Yeah.
for the last couple of years,
Very
so
impressive.
it's fun to do it. But yeah, Dave, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
I reached out to you. I'm so excited to be here, and this is literally my favorite movie.
And
so,
if people could see, you
Yeah.
have like pages and pages of notes. So we'll see
ready.
how this is going to go.
I'm so ready.
And so we should say what the movie is.
Yes.
And the very sad reason that we're doing it, because of course the great filmmaker Jonathan Demme passed away last week.
Yeah.
And he has just a fascinating body of work, because he's literally all over the map: documentaries, concert films, music videos, and several great features. But without question, his most famous and I think most important film is The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins.
Great Sir Anthony Hopkins,
Yeah.
and written by Thomas Harris, based on the novel by
Right,
Thomas
right.
Harris.
Yeah. And we should say, it's funny. I always go to do some research when we talk about a new director, so I can tell you a little bit about their life story. And I'm going to say this. I mean this in the nicest way possible.
Yeah.
He's not that interesting. and what I mean by that is that with most directors, there are these big stories of their rises and falls and maybe their excesses. You look at someone like Coppola or Kubrick or their madnesses, and Jonathan Demme seems like a fairly responsible guy who just goes along doing his work. And so there's not these big stories about him.
Sometimes there's guys like that, and that's or directors like that, male or female. That's just how it goes.
But just a little bit about him. He started with Roger Corman, like a lot of directors do. Roger Corman is the great sort of low budget action horror producer that people like Coppola and Scorsese and all sorts of directors. Ron Howard started with. Did several movies for him. Did some TV work on shows like Columbo. Went on to do Swing Shift and Melvin and Howard.
I remember Swing Shift.
Yeah.
It was
Right,
Goldie
yeah.
Hawn and Kurt Russell.
Yeah. And I think I saw like Melvin and Howard on a family vacation on a cruise ship.
Is it Art Carney with the cat?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think so. And I remember, and I think that was the only time I saw it, and I remember really liking it, and that was it. And the first thing I actually remember really knowing who Jonathan Demme was for the concert film Stop Making Sense.
Oh
Yeah,
the
that's
Dick
how he-
Talking Heads.
Yeah, it was a really groundbreaking concert film. Then he did Something Wild. He did this amazing one-man show, Swimming to Cambodia, with Spalding Gray.
Right,
Which
right.
this is like the archetypal one-man show film, which I don't know, that's a big category. But Spalding, it's a great one-person show. And then he did Married to the Mob. and then
film.
Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, and then he went off and continued to do documentaries. Did a documentary on Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Did all sorts of concert films. Did music videos, and continued and finally did the most recent one that was really well known as Rachel Getting Married, which I didn't see.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
Which was good.
Yeah, I heard it was really good. So it's sort of an interesting, meandering career. Yeah. But the film we're talking about today is Silence of the Lambs. And I want to say, so Dave, how'd you first come to this film? Do you remember?
Literally just, I was in college at the time, saw a trailer. This was right in my wheelhouse. It just looked so good. I hadn't read the book. I usually am a book guy, and I always think that the books are better than movies. And this is one of the few cases where I went and read the book afterwards, and I actually think the movie is better than the book.
Yeah. Have you read the book?
Yes, I did. This is one of those rare moments where I read the book before I saw the movie. Yeah, and because I had become a huge fan of Manhunter out of the 80s, the original Manhunter right, with William Peterson.
Right.
And so, because I was a huge Michael Mann fan through the 80s with Miami Vice and everything. So when I saw that there was a sequel to it called Silence of the Lambs, I immediately got it from the bookstore, and I tore through that book. And here's what I would say. I don't 100% agree with that. I think it's equal. I think they're both equal for their different mediums. I enjoyed the shit out of the book, and I enjoy the shit out of the movie. But I think the book goes into more detail with the Benjamin Raspail stuff and stuff like the stuff that there's more detail. So to me, it took me a long time to shake the cobwebs of the book out of my enjoyment of the movie. And so I always felt that that there was so much more that they could have explored in the movie. But rewatching it for the show today, finally the cobwebs are out, and I was able to really enjoy the movie as a standalone piece. And it's such a fantastic film to revisit if you haven't revisited it in a while.
Yeah. And so since we're talking about the book,
and I saw it in the theaters just like, sorry, just don't mean to, but I saw it in theaters just like Dave. I saw the trailer, had to go see it. I saw it like 4 times in the theaters. I just loved it so much.
it's always a weird experience whether you go book to movie or movie to book, because there's usually so much more in the book, but if there's a thing you love in the movie that's not in the book or vice versa, it always hurts. But if you're interested in the book, I think you should, not only should you read it, but you should actually listen to it on Audible, because guess what? The Cine-Files has a sponsor.
Sweet.
We do.
I love Audible. This is 100% true. I've been a subscriber for 10 years.
Yeah.
I have a huge audiobook library. Whenever I'm referencing things from books, the odds are I listen to it on Audible from one of their 180,000 titles in their catalog. And if you're interested in going to read the Thomas Harris books, they're on Audible. I saw they're actually they have them in Spanish.
Yeah.
You could go check them out. And if you do, we would like you to go to audibletrial.com/the Cine-Files. And that's CINEFILES, no dash. And if you do, you get a free book, you get a 30-day trial, and it helps us out.
Yeah.
So once again, that's audibletrial.com/the Cine-Files. Our first sponsor and our first plug for our first sponsor.
Fantastic. And I was here for it.
Yeah.
You did such a great job of that, Steve.
And yeah, I saw it in the theaters too. Scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get me to go to see a scary movie.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Like this kind of scary movie, or do you mean horror in general?
Well, horror, I'm out.
Okay.
I'm generally out.
Completely out.
But I love great films.
Gotcha.
And this is one of the questions is this a horror film?
No.
Or is this a thriller?
Psychological thriller.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with Dave completely.
What's the difference?
That is a great question.
Because it is scary.
For me, horror is boo, gotcha, and this is more of going inside your mind, like the horror.
Right.
It's real horror as opposed to scare horror. This is something very deep inside you.
Yeah, it's unsettling, and it works. Like if you notice, there's not a lot of gore for most of the movie.
It's all
a
in
lot of it
pictures.
is a lot of it is in pictures, and a lot of it is in your imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in a regular horror movie, there's people being pursued, usually teenagers.
Right.
But there's a lot of blood, and you see a lot of killing. And here it's everything's afterward, and it's just the effects of it.
There's also a reality to it.
Yes.
That, and I'm not, the expert on horror films at all, but this part of what's so unsettling is that it feels like our world and real. And of course, a lot of it is based on things that, they draw from some real world stories.
Yeah, and supernatural, fantastical elements are usually in horror. Like Michael Myers won't die, Freddy Krueger's in your dreams, those kinds of things. And so, you have the slasher films, but those are slasher films, right? Even a horror like the Babadook, right? And The Witch, those are fantastical still. It Follows is probably more closer to this kind of vibe, but it's really, this is a film that is kind of stands on its own. And I think it's it sparked Criminal Minds. It sparked Alone. Like I think it sparked so many procedurals off this film.
Well, I would put this. It's funny. Something I said when we talked about Die Hard, when we talked about Raiders. I certainly feel it about Jaws. Is I put this into the category of great films that ruined Hollywood.
I completely agree.
Which is that someone does something amazing, and then what happens? It changes what we do in a way, and you get all of this constant repetition of serial killers and procedurals that get bigger and bigger and grosser and grosser, and it's just. Exhausting.
Well, I worked on FBI procedurals and murder shows, and we had all of the John Douglas FBI books. And John Douglas is the guy who started profiling, who the Jack Crawford character is based on.
Oh, wow.
And had to read all of those, and it was just so much stuff that's in this movie that everybody's been trying to imitate since. You guys have talked about the Beatles before on here, and I was never a Beatles fan, which I know bothers a lot of people, but it was because I came in after they were there, and so everything that people loved about the Beatles, I'm like, well, that's what everybody's doing now.
Right.
And that's for this.
Absolutely.
For me, that's this movie. Is everything that came after this movie is everybody's just trying to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it would be interesting to see for those of you who haven't seen the film, and of course we are going to spoil everything.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen the film, it'd be interesting to see how you feel about it seeing it for the first time, because what you're going to see is all these things that have almost become cliches.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The autopsy, the profiling, the serial killer's secret lair, and psychologically getting into people's heads. And this is, of course, where it all comes from. Let's get into a little bit of the development of it. Here's something that's really interesting that I found out. The first person to buy this, who wanted to make this film, is Gene Hackman.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was going to direct it.
Oh my God.
And he put his own money into it to buy it.
Interesting.
And then as it starts to, he was there when they bring in Ted Talley, who's the screenwriter, who's a playwright. And there's a certain point where he looks at it and it's like, this is just too violent for me. I can't do this. And they gave him his money back, and he backed away from the project.
Wow.
Did he want to star in it also?
I'm assuming...
As Jack Crawford, I imagine.
He'd be a good Jack Crawford. But I don't know who else. He can't be Hannibal.
No.
Well, Anthony Hopkins has so... just dominate. I mean, no one could be Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
It's Anthony Hopkins. That's just all it could be.
There are people that argue Brian Cox is Hannibal Lecter.
He's great.
For
I've heard that
Manhunter
argument.
is great. So you can argue both, but I think obviously the enduring legacy is Hopkins as Lecter.
Yeah. So they bring in Jonathan Demme.
Yes.
And originally they went after Michelle Pfeiffer.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I could see that.
I can see that.
Especially at that time in her life, because
Yes.
Catwoman was just around that time as well.
And she also felt this too violent for me.
Wow.
And
Scarface was okay, but this was too
she's just starting out then.
I guess.
And Jodie Foster actively campaigned for this.
Wow.
She called up the writer. She called up people. She's like, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. And there was some resistance to her, which is surprising because she's right off of The Accused.
Yeah.
She's just
Right.
won an Oscar. And yet they finally go, you know what? Maybe this Jodie Foster thing will work out. And again, can't picture anybody else.
Right.
It's really hard. I couldn't picture Michelle Pfeiffer.
Although after seeing Hannibal,
Yeah.
I was watching it for this, and I wondered, I'm like, what would it have been like if Julianne Moore was in it from the get-go?
Oh, yeah.
Because Hannibal's obviously not as good a movie,
Right.
but she does a good job.
She does.
It's hard to fill in for Jodie Foster, but going back and watching, I'm like, I bet she would have been good from the start.
Julianne Moore, I mean,
Right, yeah.
what can you say? She's
Right.
one of the great actors.
But I don't know if Julianne would have been, because the thing that's great about Jodie in this film is Jodie is young. Jodie is playing her as young. She's like, we've seen Julianne Moore do vulnerable. We talked about it on Boogie Nights. She can do vulnerable, but it's almost from like kind of a mom place, a more mature place.
Right.
Whereas Jodie can access the inner child, I think, a lot easier than Julianne does. And I think for this particular movie, it completely works because you have to have Hannibal almost overwhelm her at times. Even though she's holding her own in fights and she's very strong, he's almost like a pseudo father figure because she didn't have her father died when she was 10 years old.
Yeah.
So it would have been an interesting dynamic though to see Julianne, what she would do, how different it would be. Yeah.
So let's get into the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Originally, the movie was supposed to start in some it sounds like a Kobayashi Maru, we think it's a real action, but it ends up being a training thing,
Right.
in which she accidentally shoots a kid in it, and I think the decision to I think the opening of this movie is so great.
Yeah.
We're on an obstacle course. It's cold. It's foggy. She's all alone. She's running up a hill. The obstacle course is hard.
Yeah.
And I think it so sets what this movie is about, which is her overmatched.
Absolutely.
Her always having to overcome adversity that seems bigger than her.
Right.
And by herself.
By herself.
Right. It's very symbolic, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Jodie's doing all the stunts. That shot of her climbing the rope wall and swinging down, like she's
Yeah.
completely doing all that stuff. And I think it's great that they keep that on her the whole time because it sets up her character very powerfully.
And there's a thing I didn't notice until I was just watching it is even I think one of the things that makes this such a good psychological thriller is that it gets in your personal space.
Oh, yeah.
And it does that from the opening credits.
Yeah.
The opening cards there's no more than 3 names on a card, and it takes up the whole screen. So even just the names are in your face and in your space, and you're a little off-put by it.
And the score.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
going to say the same thing.
Yep.
Howard Shore, and it's a very unusual score. It's very non-melodic, and it is very. It's heavy.
Yeah.
Like we're into heavy stuff. Well, this is all serious, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you any lightness. There's not a
No,
lot, not a lot of joy in here. And
That's-
even little things like going by that sign, which I've got to assume is a real sign. It's really shot at Quantico, really shot at the FBI. And by the way, you have to ask the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the FBI looked at this script and said, we want this.
Good.
Because they wanted more female FBI agents, and they thought this is going to be a recruiting tool. And as we're in the obstacle
It's the
course,
Top Gun of psychological
Yeah, I was just
thrillers.
going to say that.
and apparently it really was. Apparently
sure.
FBI,
Yeah,
you know.
I'm sure.
And there's that sign in the obstacle course, which is hurt, agony, pain, love it.
Yep.
That's so great at just setting what this movie's going to be about.
Same thing in the military, man.
Yeah.
They tell you to love that crap. It's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm too old. Yeah, young people can love that crap.
Yeah, Steve's life is cake. Steve's life is such cake. There's no pain or agony.
Oh, I didn't say I didn't have pain. I just said I don't love it.
There
You don't want
you
to
go.
incur
There
it,
you go.
right? That's true.
No, I'll get through it. So we get to Quantico, and she walks into it, and there's just something so important that I have to point out. She is the shortest person in the whole FBI.
They use that all the time. It's
All the
such
time.
great effect.
It's so, I mean, like she goes into this elevator at one point, surrounded by all tall red guys.
In red, right.
Yeah.
All dudes in red, yeah.
And it's just continually these little details that are pulling her out, making her different, isolating her alone. She's small, she's young.
Right.
It's so important.
But they're also increasing your feeling of dread subconsciously. The idea that they're all in red, that red always signifies
right.
danger, right? This whole idea.
Absolutely.
And they're checking her out when she walks by. There's that kind of a little bit of the, like, oh, look at her. What's a woman doing here? Or she's being seen as a sexual object, which happens throughout the movie as well.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're setting everything up before she even has the first meeting with Crawford.
well, much like as we talked about in Alien, this is in an Aliens,
Yeah.
this is a feminist movie.
Yeah.
You know, this is a movie that's really showing in a really real way
Yeah.
how tough it is for her in all sorts of ways. And we watch her with great difficulty sometimes overcoming it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but incredible strength too. Which
Absolutely.
it's truly admirable and constant.
And this is powerful for you too, I imagine, Dave, because you're the father of 2 daughters.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
there's a thing here too, the looking at how a woman is portrayed. Because in the film, she's portrayed she's strong, but she's also vulnerable. And
Right.
it's these really good pieces that are feminist pieces show both sides because women are both sides.
Right,
And
because
it's,
usually if it's a psychological thriller or a horror movie,
Yeah.
it's usually a woman being terrorized,
Right. Yeah.
and she is the main character. You think that this is going to be like a wait until dark scenario,
Right.
But it's not. She is the hero of the
'Cause she's
movie,
the hero,
and
yeah.
she stands up to the scariest guy who's ever been on film,
Yeah.
and earns his respect.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And you have a choice when you're establishing a hero. Like there is the Arnold Batman.
Right.
I show no pain. I have no weakness.
Right.
And there's definitely a draw to that kind of hero. And then there's like the John McClane
Yeah.
kind of hero
Bruce Willis,
who
yeah.
is being heroic, but part of being heroic is overcoming fear,
Yeah.
Right,
is
right.
overcoming pain, is overcoming weakness. And that's who Clarice Starling is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, is that you're going to see her overcome it. You're going to see her struggle. And one of the first places we see her struggle, she's called into Crawford's office, and she's alone there for a moment
Yeah.
and looks at the photographs on the wall of the victims of Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, and once again, it just furthers the dread, right? It just furthers this feeling of terror and dread. There is no lighthearted moments, almost no lighthearted moments in this movie.
It's like one.
There's like one, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which, so are you hitting on me or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
There's maybe that, but everything else, it just has this real power to it
Yeah.
that goes to unsettle the audience from the beginning.
So FBI agent, Special Agent Crawford or whatever it is, Scott Glenn comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
It is we talked briefly about Scott Glenn before in Apocalypse Now. I love Scott Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like the least Scott Glenny of Scott Glenn performances I can think of.
That's a great
Totally
point.
agree.
Because
Yeah.
Scott Glenn has such a dynamic energy to him.
Yeah.
And this sort of gruff sort of thing. And this is not that.
No, I would say this and The Right Stuff are the two performances where you kind of see him kind of not do that same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, even in The Right Stuff, he's got a little bit of danger.
Yeah.
There's always a
That's
danger and anger, a
Yeah.
dark thing. And in a movie of such darkness, it's weird that he's the least conflicted or dark character.
And I call him the American Max von Sydow because he's looked the same age for 40 years. Like he is like the same decades.
When he showed up in Daredevil as Stick, Stick is always one of my favorite comic book characters. And when he showed up, I was like, yes, that is the perfect person to play that role.
Yep. And they just released, as we're recording this today, the new trailer for the Defenders. And he is the voiceover from a majority of the trailer. And there's a reason for that. He's a good anchor, just like he is in this film for Jodie Foster's character. He's a good anchor, and he's willing to be corrected, to be taught by her, which I think is really a good, powerful relationship.
And in this scene, we see for the first time this technique that Jonathan Demme is going to use a lot, which is rather than frequently in film on a wide screen, you put characters on the left or on the right. Yeah. So you have one person on the left side of the frame looking to the right and the other on the right side of the frame looking left. That's not what we see here. They're right in the center, and frequently they're looking right into or almost right into the lens of the camera.
I have so much to say about this.
Please
well,
do.
No, like Jonathan Demme, I have always said is the king of the extreme close-up, the ECU. It's like he uses it a little bit in Philadelphia also, but for here, I think it's one of the main reasons this is so psychological is because you are in the movie now. Because almost all the time, like you said, he's the character is addressing you, looking right down the lens, and so when Clarice is talking to Hannibal, Hannibal's looking right at you when he's talking, and Clarice is looking right at you, telling you these stories, and so you are in there, and that just helps you get into the psychological mindset of everything that's going on. And also, you know, you're uncomfortable because you're so close sometimes, and so that puts you on edge. I think it's like a huge reason why this movie is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. I think one thing it does require: great actors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember that if they're looking right at you, the audience, then that means they were acting the scene right to camera.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do.
It really isn't an easy thing to do, man. Yeah.
Well, like one thing, if you're generally looking into the barrel of the lens of the camera, the thing you're seeing is your reflection.
Yep.
Right.
And so you're looking at yourself giving this role. It's hard.
This is why actors practice in front of mirrors, man.
Yeah.
Because they want to see what they look like looking back at them when they look in the lens.
And I sometimes think that everybody must have been cast for their eyes.
Yeah.
Because she has this look, she has this ethereal, you know, almost a child, like you said, very washed out, like almost ghostly.
Yeah.
Her hair is framed. It's just this wan, pallid face with these big eyes. Lecter has these incredible piercing eyes. Everybody in this movie has like these crazy eyes. You know, everybody that's of that level that's going to get the extreme close up.
Well, and the expression, the eyes are the windows of the soul. Yeah. I don't know if we have a soul, but I know that expression is true in filmmaking.
Yeah.
Is that there's so much. I'm sorry, John.
We're getting some looks from John.
I have a soul. Good. I don't know about you, but I have a soul.
It's really up for debate.
Not for me, it isn't. Not for me, it isn't, damn it.
You clearly.
Yeah. I might have a space where there's a soul.
Is there a little note that says, I owe you one soul, God?
He doesn't talk to me anymore.
So one thing, by the way, we've neglected to mention about Clarice Starling is that she's not a full FBI agent yet.
No,
she's a trainee.
Yeah.
She's right near the end of her training, and Crawford is asking her to go do this job for me.
We're interviewing all the serial killers now in custody for a psychobehavioral profile. Could be a real help in unsolved cases. Most of them have been happy to talk to us. You spook easily, Starling?
Not yet, sir.
See, the one we want most refuses to cooperate. I want you to go after him again today in the asylum.
And who's the subject?
The psychiatrist, Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal the cannibal.
Here's my question. How do you feel about Agent Crawford?
He's a manipulative son of a bitch.
Wow. Okay.
I go back and forth because there are times where I'm like going, oh my God, is he just using her? and sometimes I go, oh, he really cares about her. Sometimes I think he's attracted to her.
Okay.
It's hard.
Yeah, well, as you know from reading the book, there was a subplot in the book where there is an attraction.
Yeah.
He has a sick wife, but there's a thing going on. I love that they thin that out for the movie because it's and you just get hints at it. So that's a thing. But I do think he cares about her.
What do you think?
I would turn your question on its head, Steve. Is that would we be asking this if she was a male young trainee? And we've seen older men haze young male trainees all the time, and so it never unsettles us when we see it for the most part. So to me, I think he's treating her like he would treat anybody else that was a young trainee. So now, is he exploiting her sexuality with Hannibal? Absolutely, but that's the tools she has to use. A young other male agent would be exploited in a different way. His youthfulness or his aggressiveness as a young male, which I see all the time with young guys nowadays. And so those are the things, the different tactics that he uses. So I don't think Crawford's a bad guy. I think he's a smart director and knows how to use his people correctly, and he knows she can handle it, even if she doesn't know she can handle it. But what's also great about him is that she corrects him when he embarrasses her later in the film in front of those deputies. He says it really made you upset. Why? And he doesn't say it like, "Hey, are you all right?" He says it really turned your screw. And she says yes because people look at you to see how to act.
Yeah, to clarify what this point is that we're with some sheriffs.
Yes,
and so much later in the film, but he's
trying to move the sheriff away because the sheriff is vocally in front of everyone trying to undercut the FBI's power.
He uses Clarice and says, "Hey, let's maybe not talk about this essentially in front of a woman."
Right,
and she allows it to happen, and then later calls him on it and says, "They look at me based on how you treat me."
Right.
And what's great in that moment is Scott Glenn's character owns it, and he says, "Good point."
Yeah,
no, absolutely
noted.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's a terrible person. I'm just saying he's manipulative.
Yes.
Which is, he's playing chess with Hannibal, so he has to think several moves ahead.
And I would agree. And I would say that this job is not a job where you can hold hands and be kumbaya.
No,
you
absolutely.
have to do some dirty shit.
Yeah, I don't like that song, Kumbaya.
Let's do that tangent. Let's do that tangent now.
I see that in the notes.
Growing up in the 70s in Marin County, we did hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
So did I in Virginia. It was ridiculous.
I hated that song.
And this land is your land as well.
Well, that song's I like that
Well,
song.
I don't know. I didn't like it holding hands and singing it in elementary school.
I didn't want to be made to hold hands.
Yeah.
Dave, hold my hand. I just want one quick thing I want to go back to that I think was such a great point that you made is that, because what you said was that it's our sexism as the audience that we're bringing to that moment that's maybe making us perceive.
Yeah.
And that's something you got to think about. It certainly relates to this film is, you're not making a movie in a vacuum.
No.
You're making a movie for a culture that has certain expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
and they're going to interpret it based on that culture. So I thought that was a great point. I just wanted to highlight it before we
thanks,
move on.
So rare moments.
Not at all. I think we could go back over the last 40 episodes and see that's not true. So there's wonderful cut where he says, "Don't forget what Hannibal Lecter is."
Right.
And she says, "What is he?" And then we cut, and the sentence is finished in a new location by the wonderful Dr. Chilton.
Just do your job, but never forget what he is.
And what is that?
Oh, he's a monster. Pure psychopath. So rare to capture one alive.
So many good transitions in this movie, and that's the first of them.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, the transition is fantastic.
Yeah.
And Dr. Chilton.
That hair is just everything. It's just everything.
And his teeth and his smile and
The smug. He radiates smug. It's amazing.
Yeah.
he's horrible.
Yeah. Oh, a horrible human being.
Yeah. And is immediately sexually harassing Starling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a ham-handed way.
Yeah.
Baltimore could be an interesting city if you have the right guy. Get the fuck out of here, you dirty bastard.
and what's so horrible, and you can see her take it in,
Yeah.
and her like, okay, I have to now deal with this, and this is what we see throughout the film.
Right.
I take this thing in, it's uncomfortable, and now I have to overcome it.
Yeah.
She rejects him in a fairly nice way.
No, and remember,
Yeah.
this is 1992 or 1991?
91, yeah.
91, right? In 2017, it's so weird to see this, right? But women are talking about this in volumes now. We're hearing in articles and in pieces in Twitter. This is something they deal with on a daily basis all the time. And to see it so highlighted in this film, you think they're exaggerating, and they're probably, with most women's experience, is probably less than what they actually, and it seems so overt in this film.
And this is one of those areas. It's one of the first areas where you see this strength from her.
Yeah.
And it's not grandiose or large. It's just a quiet strength where she obviously, like you said, deals with this all the time.
Yeah.
And this man is like the definition of unctuous. The word was made for him, and she just completely redirects him, turns around, gets what she wants out of him, and then it's like, thanks, and he's left wondering what the hell happened.
And the minute that she turns him down, his whole manner changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he is horrible to her.
I see. Let's make this quick then.
Because he rushes her through, and it's apparently like 3 different locations the way they shot this.
Yeah.
Basically going through this descent into hell while he describes the rules of seeing Hannibal Lecter. And the fact he's rushing it so fast, and it's so scary, it's an overwhelming experience going down into this pit.
Do not touch the glass. Do not approach the glass. You pass him nothing but soft paper. No pencils or pens. No staples or paper clips in his paper. Use the sliding fruit carrier, no exceptions. If he attempts to pass you anything, do not accept it. Do you understand me?
Yes, I understand, sir.
And I love how much darker it gets as you go level to level, and then the red lights near the end. Yeah, all of that.
And we go into this red light space, and he says,
I'm going to show you why we insist on such precautions. On the afternoon of July 8, 1981, he complained of chest pains and was taken to the dispensary. His mouthpiece and restraints were removed for an EKG. When the nurse leaned over him, he did this to her. The doctors managed to reset her jaw, more or less, save one of her eyes. His pulse never got above 85, even when he ate her tongue.
and he shows her a photograph.
Right.
Yeah, and the beautiful part is we don't see the photograph.
We don't see it.
Just like you said earlier,
Yeah.
Dave, it's all in our minds, what we
Yeah.
imagine just from his description of having to set her jaw and her eye.
And
all
again,
that.
the great performance of Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
She takes it in. She responds to it.
Yeah.
She controls her emotions. She summons her courage. And then she dismisses him in the most awesome and cool way.
Yeah.
If Lecter feels that you're his enemy, then, well, maybe we'll have more luck if I go in by myself. What do you think?
You might have suggested this in my office and saved me the time.
Yes, sir. Then I would have missed the pleasure of your company, sir.
It's just fantastic.
And then his comeback is so great because it's an emasculated comeback. It's like, well, you could have told me this earlier instead of wasting, because he's in front of other dudes, so he has to kind of try to clumsily find his pride again and says, you'd have saved me a trip all the way down here, right? Like, well, who else was going to guide her down here? You did it because you wanted to kind of woo her with your knowledge, and then when you got castrated, you didn't know how to rediscover your masculinity.
Well, his first attempt was, I'm going to be suave.
Yeah.
And my second attempt is, I'm going to scare the crap out of you.
Right.
And that's how I'm going to get my ego.
Right.
And then that doesn't work either. Yeah, it's and now we're in this room, and she does this. There's this 360 camera move of looking around at the guns and the bars and the stone, and the thing that we've been doing really almost since we saw Agent Crawford is building to this entrance.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've been building up this person of Hannibal Lecter.
And I do want to say one thing. Frankie Faison is fantastic.
Yes.
As Barney.
Barney.
Yeah, he's just the perfect guy to cast, right? He's
so
that
nice.
buffer between the darkness and the light. He is that buffer, and he says you're going to be fine. He gives her that encouragement. Everything that Chilton isn't, Barney is. And so then she walks down and all that she has to encounter, right? Like the multiple MIGs saying you can smell her cunt, all these things that are really unsettling. And it's so descriptive in the book. When you read the book, it's even more descriptive what she has to walk through, because there's more lunatics that she has to walk through and see until she gets to Lecter.
And there's a chair. It's sitting in the middle of this long corridor.
Yeah.
And she walks into the space, and rather than bars, we see these plexiglass wall, and standing there in the center of the room is Hannibal Lecter.
Good morning.
The best. I can't think of anything. It's like you said, it's such a build up, and it doesn't disappoint.
Yeah. No.
And this is a guy who, from just, you haven't heard him talk yet, and you're scared to death. He's he's like 50-some-year-old white guy.
Yeah.
It's like you shouldn't like a kind of guy you'd see anywhere, and yet you are petrified, terrified, even though you know you're safe.
And this is
because it's a POV shot. It's just like the roundabout going through the room. You are in the center of the POV shot where you go around the room, and so you're that character, and then you come down and it's the POV. So you're her meeting him.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where Demme doesn't have to do the extreme close-up because she wants that whole shot of him because the physicality of Anthony Hopkins in how he's even standing.
Yes.
He is commanding the entire space. Not just the room he's in, the entire frame.
And there's a sense of he knew she was coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's just standing. He's been standing here for we don't know how long, waiting for you. And it's interesting, too. So Demme is talking to Hopkins, and Anthony Hopkins, by the way, is one of my all-time favorite actors. He can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And Demme is talking to him, and he wasn't a big star at this point.
No.
Like, Demme had seen him in Elephant Man.
Right.
And where he played this very compassionate doctor, and he said, that's what I need for Hannibal Lecter.
Wow. And that was like 10 years ago.
10 years earlier, yeah. And I, like, the earliest thing I ever saw him in was he's in Lion and Winter.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Playing Richard, a very young Anthony Hopkins. But anyway... So Demme had asked him, where do you want to be when she shows up? You want to be sitting in the chair? You want to be lying on the bed, sitting on the floor? What do you want to be doing? And he said, and it was Hopkins who said, what if I'm standing still in the center of the room? And Demme takes a pause and goes, okay. And Hopkins knew one of the things that he said, always play the opposite of expectations. And he said that stillness and economy is much more powerful than a bunch of loud, grandiose movement.
Well, I think Yoda is like that in the Star Wars franchise.
Sure.
Yoda is economy of movement. When he needs to whip out that lightsaber and go nuts and flip around, he can do that. But he doesn't have to. Well, it doesn't have to.
And it's a great example, too, of always play the opposite.
Yes.
You hear there's this great Jedi Master, the most powerful guy in the world. Meet Yoda.
Right.
Yeah.
4 foot tall.
Yeah, and just you have to, if you have to come to them, that gives them power.
Right.
So it's like, that's a lot of actors, I'm sure, do the thing where, like, this is a scene where we're going crazy, and I'm going to whisper instead of yell.
Yeah.
Because now you have to listen.
And little things like he asked for his prison garb to be tailor fit, which you could see. It's all...
It really is.
It's
snug.
just
It's snug.
perfect. And things like the smelling.
Yeah.
The smelling is just...
Watching his nostrils flare is terrifying.
Yeah.
And the first thing I'd ever seen Anthony Hopkins in was Magic. I don't know if anybody remembers
my
that,
God.
that
I
horror
wanna
film
talk
where the
about
dummy
that.
comes to... It's a ventriloquist film from the 70s.
I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. Almost like a clown. Ventriloquist
That's right,
dummies
that's
are the
true.
clowns of the puppet world.
Yeah, in his mind, the dummy comes to life, starts telling him what to do. This is not child's play. This is like real shit. And it was an awesome film, and he did such a good job in that. So I saw shades of that in what he's doing with Lecter. When he goes evil in Magic, I see shades of it in Lecter. It's so great to see him do that again.
He's so powerful. And this conversation, this is the first of several conversations we're going to have where it's just long dialogue between two people.
Yeah.
And it is thrilling. You know, it's not often you could say that about just a still dialogue scene, but it is thrilling.
Yeah, that was another point I wanted to make about psychological thrillers, is that something that he does that also unsettles you, Demme does, is the pacing is fantastic, because you start out, there's some action, then you go right into, I need you to go meet this guy, and she goes and meets this guy, and it's a good pacing. But what he does is all of the interesting scenes here, like you said, are just dialogue between the two of them.
Yep.
And so then the interspersed scenes are action. Whereas normally an action movie or other movie, there's big action sequences, and in between there's some investigation or some dialogue, some people talking. This is a lot of scenes of two people talking, and then in between there's car chases and guns and like all of her training.
Yeah.
It's like climbing walls and fighting and shooting at the shooting range, and that's all extraneous.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the heart.
Right.
And it's really about building this relationship between Starling and Lecter.
Right.
And we start building it right here. Like, her agenda is, I need to get this guy to sign this thing.
Right.
But he wants to have a conversation. And she understands that. Like, her intelligence of like how to deal with him gets shown right away. Up until this point where she tries to force the issue.
Well, perhaps you'd care to
lend us your view on this questionnaire, sir?
Oh, no. You were doing fine. You had been courteous and receptive to courtesy. You had established trust with the embarrassing truth about Miggs. And now this ham-handed segue into your questionnaire. It won't do.
Still don't know what his accent is, but I love it.
Right.
It's a little all over the place.
Courteous and receptive to courtesy.
Well, and he's also messing with her because he
Yeah.
takes on her accent some of the time when he's talking to her, and then he destroys her.
Yeah.
I mean, like he comes at her with it's sort of like the Sherlock Holmes moment where I know everything about you,
Right.
and he does it to just break her into little pieces.
Right.
Do you know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube. A well-scrubbed, hustling rube with a little taste. Good nutrition's given you some length of bone, but you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land? You know how quickly the boys found you, all those tedious, sticky fumblings in the backseats of cars, while you could only dream of getting out, getting anywhere, getting all the way to the FBI.
And does she break?
No.
She doesn't break.
No.
You see a lot, Doctor. But are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? What about it? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're afraid to.
I have watched this movie so many times, and I always just loved it. And I never stopped to think, like, why does he like her so much?
Right.
I just accepted it, and it's
Yeah, I think this is why.
it's that, and also she treats him normally. There's a moment where he's like, "Oh, you think you can dissect me with this blunt little tool?"
Yeah.
And you can see other places in the scene where she has that drive and that desire, and she's wanting to get this thing from him.
Yeah.
But at that moment, she's like, "No," and it's genuine. She's treating him like a person, and then he does everything that he does, obviously to Chilton, because Chilton's his bitch, but he does everything he normally does to take command of a situation, and she won't let him do it.
Yeah.
Right, and she holds her own, and
Yeah.
he respects that very much. And I think also there is this feeling of like he sees her as a pure thing. He can dissect her, but in dissecting her, he doesn't find ulterior motives that are evil, like he found with Raspail, like he found with Chilton, like he found probably numerous other people. And listen. It's a charismatic performance, absolutely, but he's still a horrible human being. But the thing that redeems him is this relationship with Clarice, because it's essentially a date. You know, and they're not necessarily. He's flirting with her in a different way, but he's also a father figure as well. Like he walks this line, and she has this because we find out later how her father died when she was 10 years old, because he wants. So we see this with Jack Crawford, we see this with Anthony, and with Lecter, but it doesn't take away her power. Just because she has this proclivity to have these father figures in a way in her life, she still retains her strength and her power because her determination is off the charts.
Well, and both with Crawford and with Lecter, she's not fully subservient.
Right.
No.
She
right.
teaches them things. She doesn't overpower Lecter, but she certainly stands up to him.
Yes.
She holds her own with him, and obviously the same with Crawford. And one thing we should say is that it's important with Lecter. We talked about this with other films who had great villains, is that there is a difference between liking someone in a movie and thinking they are morally good.
Yes.
Yeah,
is that,
absolutely.
Is that I love Hannibal Lecter as a character to watch in a film.
Yes.
That doesn't mean he's not a monster of purely evil scariness.
Yes.
But that's what's he is endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, as we're going to get to, you root for him.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Even though he's doing horrible, awful, terrible things.
Right.
So there's one line in this film there's a lot of movies that have one line that is the most famous line that gets repeated over and over again and is over repeated. I think we have to mention I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti, and then the noise.
You know what's amazing? You said that, and I wasn't sure which line you were going to do because there's so many good lines in this movie.
Yeah, but that line is the line.
That's the best, and but I completely forgot
and
about
the
it.
noise after the line. Oh, yeah. And it's one of those things, it's like, I think we kind of talked about this when we talked about Pulp Fiction and the Royale with cheese.
Yeah.
Is that it is an amazing moment. The noise he makes is amazing, and it like a pop song that got overplayed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just heard it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it even can still have the impact watching the film at this point because I've heard it so much.
No, yeah, that's the thing we talked about earlier. Is that I was saying about the Beatles is that everybody's doing it now.
Yeah.
Like every bad guy that we've seen since 1991 wants to be Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
And they're not. Right. You know, and this is that moment where if you watch it now, I don't know what it would be like to watch it for the first time now because everything probably seems cliche because everybody else has done it since then.
Yeah. It's funny, two that pop to mind that like are in the same league is one we've already talked about, which is Anton Chigurh.
Yes.
In No Country for Old Men.
Absolutely.
And the other one that I know we will talk about is Heath Ledger.
Yep. Dark Knight.
In Dark Knight.
I was going to mention that too. That's perfect. Yeah.
And those are two that have that same not knowable force of nature.
Right.
You know.
There's no background with either of them. Even when you're given the background that he was a psychiatrist, whatever, you don't know why he developed a taste for flesh. You know where it came from. Same thing with Chigurh and same thing with Heath Ledger. He gives you 3 different origin stories in one movie, which is great.
So that's going to be the end of the interview.
Yeah.
You know, he sends us "Fly away, little starling."
Yeah, fly.
And she walks down and starts to leave, and then Miggs has been masturbating.
Yes, that's why he's called Multiple Miggs.
And
it is because he masturbates multiple times a day.
Is that why?
That's
why
he
had
yeah.
multiple
I thought he had
personalities.
multiple
No, it's
personalities.
because he masturbates multiple times a day.
Okay.
Did you see a different personality from when she showed up? He was a nut the whole way through, the same nut all the way through.
No, I thought they said he had multiple. I don't know, but maybe I'm okay. So, and he throws the results of his work,
right? His cum.
and hits her in the face.
We're not going to draw the line at cum, are we?
I have a very delicate sensibility.
But this is one of my favorite moments in the movie because of the ballsiness of this film. Nothing like this film had ever been done before. To show cum flying in that is not porn. To show cum flying in the face of her hair, I was so surprised because that's in the book, and I was so surprised that they did that.
Yeah, it's so off-putting. It's one of those things I remember being in the theater and being. I was on a date, and it was a double date. So it was like I'm there with my college girlfriend and my brother and his girlfriend, who later became my sister-in-law.
Wow.
And like this is one of those things where like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And it's not the only holy shit movie in the
so,
movie.
Yeah, it's so rough, and that causes Lecter to call her back.
Yes,
and because he hates discourtesy.
Right.
And he gives her one little clue.
Yeah.
Which is Miss Moffat or something.
Yeah, Miss Moffat.
Look deep inside yourself and find Miss Moffat. Yeah.
So something that occurred to me watching this last time is I went, oh, if Miggs doesn't masturbate, then Catherine dies.
Movie's over.
Yeah. Right. But those little things that can happen in life.
I had never thought about that before.
Because I don't think we get anywhere.
No, you're right. Because he had dismissed her.
Yeah. Right. And she goes back to Crawford and says, I didn't get anywhere. She goes back to her training class.
Yeah.
And and Buffalo Bill kills some more people.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right.
So thanks, Miggs.
The R.I.P. Multiple Miggs.
Yeah, the R.I.P. Multiple Miggs. He finally fulfilled his purpose. He really did. Then we have a really brief flashback. That's sort of where we see, which is sort of odd.
Yeah, I love
the way flashbacks are handled in this movie is very subtle because they don't spell it out for you. It's sort of like, oh, I think this is a flashback. Oh, what's that about? Right. And now we're into training. We get a little bit of her training. We see one little piece that's important. She goes into this room in a training situation. She doesn't check her corner, and she would have gotten killed.
But that's great because it shows you she's not she's not Uber.
Right.
You know, she struggles. It really humanizes her and lets you know that she's it's hard on every level for her.
And I would argue that this comes into play at the end of the film. Because she hears the click,
that
is her turning because of what had happened in the room. When she hears the click, she's already ready to go.
It's a beautiful plant. Yeah, I totally agree. And then we hear that Miggs is dead.
Yes.
That Lecter talked him to death, essentially.
Which is, again, you didn't see it.
Nope.
So you can only imagine it, and it's so much worse than anything they could have shown. It's terrifying.
Right. It elevates his power to this superhero sort of level.
Yeah.
How do you make a man swallow his own tongue?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Tune in next week for the Chronicles, the Hannibal Lecter Chronicles. And that's also, once again, that's in the book, and it's the scene is actually in the book between him and
really?
Miggs, which is really interesting.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
remember
see,
that.
I read the book, but it was in the early 90s.
Yeah,
I read
No
that book so long ago.
It stayed with me. I read it over and over again. That book and The Firm, I read over and over and over again. And Sphere. Oh, I love Sphere, the Crichton Sphere. Oh, I love that film. I love that
You
book.
must have been
rather,
so
not the film.
disappointed.
The film was a piece of shit. Sphere is such a great book.
Not coming anytime soon to the Cine-Files. It's a really long
I would venture ever.
Yeah, it's a really long list.
Yeah.
And then Starling has the deduction that leads them to the storage unit.
Yeah.
It's a great scene. And this is just one example, filmmaking-wise, of filling your scene with great details.
Yeah.
You didn't need to have a great supporting character come in, but he's a great character.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't need to have that door not able to lift up, and she gets the jack and all that. But those are great details. Or her cutting her leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can smell the blood later. To reinforce his supernatural powers, apparently, and I love the my driver does not like to do physical.
Yeah,
labor.
that thing.
It's just so random.
But that's good filmmaking.
Yep, absolutely.
Every moment in a movie is an opportunity to be interesting.
Oh yeah, and the details in this movie are astounding on every level. Not just the characters in those little moments, but like I got to give a shout out to the production design and set dressing.
Absolutely.
You go in the storage space. There's so much stuff in there, and even Crawford's office. All of the photos. All of the articles, and later when we get to Bill's basement, I have a lot to say about Bill's basement.
Yeah.
But like,
As you should.
There's so many details in everything, and I've watched this movie, I don't know, 40 times, and I'm still always finding new stuff.
And going into this abandoned storage unit, even though it seems extremely unlikely that anything's going to hurt you, it's fucking scary.
Yeah. That place hasn't been open for 10 years, and you're still terrified for her.
Absolutely terrified. And we find this car that's under this giant American flag, and as we're looking through the car, we find a head in a bottle.
Yeah. Benjamin Raspail.
Yeah.
But by the way, this is one of the things that they're taking from real life.
Yes.
Jeffrey Dahmer had a head in his refrigerator and body parts frozen, and
And again, such small details.
Yep.
Like they talk about it. They talk about it later. His the sexual identity thing. But you can see just from the head, there's a false eyelash.
Yep.
And some rouge on the cheek.
Yep.
And it's just like these little details that pull you in. It's amazing.
Great point.
Also, the mannequin is headless. So already in your mind, it unsettles you that there's a headless mannequin in a full dress sitting in the backseat of a car as if it's being simulated for some reason. And then the cover is taken off and you see the head in there. It's just so great. And once again, another film. Not this film.
Right.
She's strong. She
Right.
sees it and she's able to process it and move forward.
She doesn't have no reaction.
No.
She has a reaction,
Yes.
and she controls a reaction.
Yes, exactly.
And she goes back to Hannibal, and this time she shows up fairly aggressively to ask him questions, and he hands her a towel.
Yeah.
That's an amazing moment to me. And she sits down, and she towels off.
Right.
Because he wants to have a civilized conversation.
Right.
But she's not supposed to accept anything from him.
Right.
You know, so it's been built up earlier. It's great.
And we look in his room, and there's all this stuff missing. Where are his drawings? Where is stuff? And we learn that Chilton is punishing him. And particularly, there's a TV that's playing like a religious channel.
Yeah.
And he says, as soon as you leave, they're going to turn the volume way up.
Right.
Chilton's a horrible person.
Well, it's not like these are good people, but he is a horrible person. And the way he's set up, because we're so charmed by him, by Lecter, is we see him as more evil than Lecter almost.
No, that's
because he's
that's how it
willfully evil
feels.
as opposed to uncontrollably evil.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, because you hate Chilton.
Yes,
You like Lecter.
you really do.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. Is in a movie sense? I don't know if
Right.
we wouldn't like him in real life.
No, probably not. I wouldn't be near him in real
my
life.
God,
I hope not.
I would shoot him on sight.
In this scene, he's the first one who says, "I'll help you if you help me."
Yes, exactly.
So he offers the
Yep,
deal,
yep.
and she leaves. And we also, and he mentioned sort of at the end. Well, I think about now he's going to be going. That Buffalo Bill's going to be going after his next
Special lady.
Special
Right.
lady.
Another great transition.
And it's a great transition to we're listening to this song.
Tom
and this,
Petty, American
Petty.
Girl.
Yeah.
Girls, she's rocking out in the car.
Yeah,
She's
Brooke
having
Smith.
a good time. Brooke Smith. And it's interesting. One of the things with both Brooke Smith and Ted Levine, who are going to meet soon, sometimes you play a role in a movie and
Yes,
you
are
will
forever.
never not be dealing with the fact that you played this role.
I came out of this movie and turned to my girlfriend and I was like, that guy who played Buffalo Bill is never going to get another job.
But he did.
Because it's a testament to his ability.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he is so perfectly creepy, and he's that guy.
Yeah.
He's fucked.
Yep.
And amazingly, he not only got another job, but then now plays a cop all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And you got to say something about Ted Levine as an actor, that
Oh my
he's
God, so
able
good.
to be almost as good as Hopkins.
In his
Almost
own
as
way.
good in his own way. right?
when he doesn't have people to play against.
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Great
right?
point. When he's by himself.
Not a lot of dialogue.
No.
Yeah.
You know, barely any lines.
No.
And and it's funny, like he is in a weird way. He's a monster.
Yeah, he really is.
It's just this almost beyond sort of. Because Hannibal Lecter is very human.
Yeah.
and
He's barely human. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
Bill is barely human.
barely human.
Right.
And we see his first plan. He's got a broken arm. He's trying to move this couch into the back of a van,
Straight up Ted Bundy.
which is Ted Bundy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we're introduced to the glasses that they can see at night.
Right.
You can hit
Yeah.
that very, and once again, this is Demme doing a great job with the ECU, the extreme close. We
Yeah.
see the eyes,
Yep.
and then the glasses come down, the infrared glasses.
And
So
this
intense.
nice woman helps him move the
Yeah.
thing in the van. You know, when the guy says, "You go into the van," don't go in the van.
Right. Well, her face betrays that too. Her
Right.
face is like, oh, this feels creepy.
But he's got the cast on his
Yes.
arm, so she feels pity for him.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like that extra step. If it was just a dude with a thing that was too heavy,
And-
she wouldn't do it.
And
Right.
again, we don't see what he does to her in the van.
exactly.
That is where your imagination happens, and it is really, really scary and upsetting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And particularly in the next moment where he cuts her dress through the back, but she is not unconscious.
Nope.
No.
She is whimpering, and that makes it so much worse. It's a really, really distressing scene.
Well, and I think this is the difference, and I really want to point this out to me. When I see other procedurals, other films like this, they exploit these moments in a way that is,
Exactly.
to me, offensive.
Yes.
Whereas Silence of the Lambs walks that line correctly. It doesn't linger. So for your own sick enjoyment, and I think a lot of these TV
Right,
shows,
that's a great point.
and
I
these
totally
films,
agree.
yeah,
That
they
is
get it
fantastic.
wrong.
Yes, because
right?
they have to do it week after week.
Yes.
They sensationalize
Yes,
it.
exactly. Which is why Pantinkin said he left Criminal Minds, because to him it just got too much of that. They were sensationalizing rather than making them criminals. They were almost making them exciting
Glorifying,
things
yes.
for people to watch. Yeah.
Well, this is that quote from Coppola about the violence in Godfather.
Yes.
He said, "I don't want the violence in this film to be pornographic."
Right.
Is that, and that's the thing, is when it becomes titillating.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch this thing, which with Hannibal Lecter is escape.
Right.
It does get there, but in this case, no.
No.
Yeah.
But they also they because that comes so late, you've earned it.
Yeah.
You don't actually, except for some photos, you don't actually see a lot of violence.
Right.
This punching happens slightly off
Off-screen.
screen.
Right.
Like you don't see anybody really until you get to that corpse later, the autopsy.
Right. Which let's get there, because we hear that there's been another body,
Yep.
and so we're heading off to West Virginia, and Crawford continues to be tough on her.
Yep.
He does not, as you said before, hold hands with her and sing Kumbaya.
No.
He continues to push her, and she continues to show not only her strength of character, but also her intelligence.
Yeah.
And that she is maybe ahead of Crawford. And we don't know. Like, he's asking her these questions, and she goes, well, he must be this, he must be this, he must be
Right.
this. Had Crawford already figured all that stuff out?
Well,
Yeah, we don't.
Earlier in the film, she says, well, that they haven't posted the results or whatever. So he knows how good she is.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
seen the results of her
Right,
tests and her analysis from her teachers. So she knows he deploys her in the right
No,
way.
that's an excellent point. He came to her
Yeah.
for help.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
I don't think he expected her to be as much help
Right.
Probably
as she's
not.
being,
Right.
but
Probably not.
certainly came to her. We go to the sheriff's office. We have the scene that you talked about earlier. And then as there's this moment, it moves into a flashback. And it is so odd the way
Yeah.
it's handled.
Yeah.
She's looking into this room, and then we see her face, and then we're moving into a funeral. And the first time I think I didn't understand that we had entered a flashback.
Yeah,
you
this
know?
this flashback confused me the first time I
Yeah.
saw it. The first one, when she comes out of the interview at the insane asylum, makes sense because it shows you like her emotional release.
Right.
It shows you how hard this whole thing was for her. She had the strength, but now she has to have a moment of vulnerability and reflection. This one was just like, what is going on? And it took me a while.
It takes you, and then it ends up that we realize that it's the young Clarice at
Yeah.
her father's funeral.
Yeah.
And right as she leans in to kiss him, we're out.
Yeah.
You know?
And once again, these two flashbacks are all centralized on her father and her being a young girl at the time.
Yeah.
It's really important because that is still there. That's where the steel comes from, having to adopt at a young age.
Well, and it's also this girl who lost her father
And mother.
has these two fathers.
Yep.
Of very different kinds.
Yep.
And now we go into the autopsy.
Yeah.
Again, a staple of procedurals at this point, although this one is particularly gross and well done.
It is.
And they have the stuff under their noses to keep from the smell, which it viscerally works on me. Watching it, I imagine that smell.
And the actress who was the body should get some props because you can tell it's a real person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And just
as are, by the way, all the photographs.
Yeah.
So all those photographs are real people that had to be made up and filmed. Those aren't dummies or anything.
Right.
It's the weird things you have to do when you're making a film.
I think one of the great things Demme does here is show her reaction, not like everyone else is putting these things on and they've done it before and they have their moment, but she smells it for the first time. She's a trainee, right? So this is her first time seeing a dead body in this kind of situation, we would imagine.
Right.
And Demme does it through the windows, right? It's her
right.
reflection.
She's turned away.
She's turned away. It's her reflection. So we don't see a close-up. We see her through the window, the reflection of her face in the window. I think that's
her
brilliant.
taking a moment to steal herself before she turns around.
So we're not undercutting her. We're giving her more humanity by giving it a bit of distance. I think it's brilliant. Just brilliant film
And
work.
again, right at this moment where I would crack, she overcomes that and shows her stuff again. She shows her intelligence, her knowledge about this thing, even to the point where we discover this moth in the mouth of the body.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful sound design thing here, which is they decided to add the sound of a breath just as the moth comes out.
The air escaping
As if this is the last, a held breath. It's not logical.
Right.
And it's very subtle. But it's really disturbing.
Yeah. And that caretaker is disturbing too, who we see in Batman and a number of films.
yeah.
That's a great casting choice for that guy.
Yeah, he's great. And then we go off to find our entomologists. And this is really the only light moment
Yes,
of the film.
it is, right?
This is it. When you wanted some comic relief, you get 2 minutes of it.
And there's a lot of this in the book. Their relationship is
they end
the
up
book.
having a romantic relationship, right?
Yeah.
And right as we find out this is called the Death's Head moth, which is a real moth.
Of course, yes.
And right at the end of our comic relief, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to be happy for very much longer because we have to go to Bill's lair.
It's unsettling to go into the mind because it's his mind, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's so stark. It's all the concrete and the brick and the dirt, all of it in this pit down there. All of it is very much a descent to rival what Lecter's is another descent into hell, but it's almost like Dante's Inferno, going that deep and that down into the pit.
And again,
Lecter's descent into hell is controlled by the jailkeepers.
Yes.
This one is controlled by the monster.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And just so many details. There's pictures of him, Polaroids of him with strippers next to the door. And it's they had to have a shoot where they brought in strippers and did he has a comforter on his bed that has swastikas on it.
Right.
Oh, I missed that one.
And
And
I caught that this time too.
there's just so much stuff in that basement, and all of it is horrible and terrifying.
Right.
Yeah. It's sort of like the labyrinth and the Minotaur.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
great.
it's just he's this monster, and we hear the voice of the victim, of Catherine. We don't see her yet. We see this dog running around.
Yeah, and you take that extra step. You're already down there in his basement, and then it goes around, and you follow the dog, and there's another level down. And again, you don't see her.
Right.
You just hear her. You know she's down there. You don't know how bad it is,
Right.
but you assume it's bad.
And what is he doing? He's sewing naked.
Yeah.
There's a lot to reckon with.
Ted Levine in great shape, by the way, for this.
Oh, yeah.
Film. This. Now you see him now as a character actor who's put on weight as an older man, but he looked really good in this film. They had abs and everything, man. He is fantastic in this.
Yeah,
film.
he put some work in.
Yes, he
to
did.
play this guy.
So shout out to him.
We discovered this is actually a senator's daughter, which is going to make this a much bigger deal. Senator makes a statement, and we realize is very smart. That's Diane Baker playing the senator,
and that's director Casey Lemons playing her friend. She did that film with Sam Jackson, something about the Bayou. I can't remember what it is. Eve's Bayou, right? Eve's Bayou. I think she directed that film. Yeah, Casey Lemons. There's a number of directors in this. Roger Corman's in this film.
Yeah, George Romero.
Yeah, George Romero's in this film.
Wait, who's George Romero in it?
He's one of the FBI guys.
Yeah, in Memphis when they come to take her away.
Yep.
I didn't realize that. So we're heading back to Hannibal, and now Chilton's getting pissed at Clarice.
Yes, he is.
He doesn't like that she keeps visiting him. What's all this about? And Clarice comes in to see Dr. Lecter, and she makes him this offer.
Yeah.
We're going to let you out of this place. We're going to put you on an island.
But what's great though is this exchange here furthers their relationship, right?
Yes.
Because he says we understand now he wants that quid pro quo. Like that's where that whole phrase became a pop culture thing. People started using it all the time. Just like what is it? One from Dead Poets Society, Carpe Diem.
Carpe Diem.
People started using it all. The quid pro quo started all of a sudden
Everybody's
being
speaking
used.
Latin.
Yeah.
All the kids these days.
It's
In
not a
the
dead
late
language.
80s, early 90s, it's just Latin was very
Right,
big.
all of it is all cool. And he breaks her down because he wants to know her. Once again, these are dates in a way. Like he's asking her about her life, getting to the meat of it, and then we see the joke. In essence, it's a way to do exposition without doing exposition, and it works seamlessly in the movie.
What is your worst memory of childhood?
Death of my father.
Tell me about it and don't lie, or I'll know.
He was a town marshal, and one night he surprised 2 burglars coming out of the back of a drugstore. They shot him.
Was he killed outright?
No, he was very strong. He lasted more than a month. My mother died when I was very young, so my father had become the whole world to me. And when he left me, I had nothing. I was 10 years old.
You're very frank, Clarice. I think it would be quite something to know you in private life.
Quid pro quo, Doctor.
But so she garners sympathy with us as an audience, but also with Lecter. It develops more respect, more care for her.
Because after Clarice gives him information about the death of her dad,
Right.
now he is going to give her information. He already knows that the victims are big.
Yeah.
And when he asks, she says we found something in the mouth. He says, was it a butterfly?
Yeah.
You know?
That's where you see her naked ambition. She's so excited that he knows that. And then later on, the transsexual stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you're so close now, you're going to catch her. She's like, what? Why? Tell me. Like,
And then as we're having this conversation, what do we discover? Chilton is listening.
Yeah.
that bastard. And great foreshadowing. It already happened when he's bringing her down in the original thing.
Yeah.
He's like, don't pass him anything, no pencils or pens. And then you show the recording thing, and then it follows his pen up to his ear to adjust. It's that pen.
The pen is very important. It's just classic, really good storytelling.
Yep.
Really
Yep.
good storytelling.
Just lay that groundwork. And it's a pen that guy would have, a gold
Of course it is.
cylindrical pen.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I got that pen for my bar mitzvah. So, it rubs the lotion in its skin.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Mister, my family will pay cash. Whatever ransom you're asking for, they'll pay it.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
The bastard.
Iconic. There's so many iconic lines in this movie.
Yeah.
And people still do imitations of James
yeah.
Gumb doing this stuff. It's so great. Puts the lotion in the basket.
And it's so upsetting. It's so hard. Now we see
Yeah.
she's down on the bottom of this pit. She's wearing some kind of a rag, you know, and she's screaming and trying to get out, and he's just repeating the same thing, and it is so horrible.
Well, there's a moment where you actually feel he might feel bad about what he's doing, right?
yeah.
Because he has this, he keeps repeating it, and he's like,
Yeah.
like he's really fighting against himself, and then he screams at her to put the fucking lotion in the basket, right?
Right.
And then she kind of, because he comes at her so strong, she kind of does it, and he kind of listens to it.
And then the moment of her seeing the bloody fingernails of the person who had been in there before.
Yeah.
That's some scary stuff.
And he turns around and starts imitating her screaming.
Right.
And faking.
He's gotten over that moment of humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny, I never saw it as a moment of humanity. But,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
totally could. Like, to me, it was always why do I have to deal with this person? She's so irritating.
Oh,
To me, it
wow.
was because when they played the video, when the senator was
No, it's a
pleading
good
for
point.
her,
I get-
he's like, oh, they keep saying her name. It humanizes her, and so she's having this moment. We're like, please, Mister, please, and he's like, no, and she keeps pleading to him, and he's like, I don't want to see you as human, and so he overcomes that briefly.
Now Hannibal's strapped into a thing, and Chilton's talking to him, and he says that Clarice's offer was bullshit. When you first saw this, did you believe him? I know it's hard to remember.
interesting.
I didn't believe. I was like, well, that can't be true, because he's a horrible person.
I will say that I didn't remember it, and I felt this time around that he was bullshitting. He wasn't telling the truth.
Yeah.
So I would say I probably did feel that he was lying.
Yeah.
Because nothing about him has shown him to be a reputable person.
Right.
So why would I think he wouldn't be manipulating the situation for his own benefit?
No, I can't remember, but that's an excellent point. I think at the time I probably did think he was full of shit because, of course, I wanted to root for Clarice.
Yeah. Well, because all throughout the whole thing, she's been honest. Like that's her main.
Right.
She's an earnest person. And as he's talking, we see again this gold pen, my bar mitzvah pen, and he continues to be horrible. And then when we cut back, the pen is gone.
Yeah. And we see him, Lecter, looking at the pen.
Yeah.
Just looking at it the whole time because he knows if he can get his hands on it, what he's going to do with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this has been so well set up throughout the film, and that pen being gone.
But it's a great swerve because we've seen Clarice and Crawford deal honestly with Lecter. So we don't think they're going to all of a sudden make an offer that they're not going to follow through on. And then I don't know what they do. So the person we saw as like duplicitous and evil and manipulative actually is telling the truth. He's still being manipulative for his own ends, his own benefits, which we see later in the press conference when he spells out his name, the arrogant prick. But like all that stuff, but like we don't want to initially believe, and it almost destroys the relationship between Lecter and Clarice.
Absolutely. Because in the next scene we discover with Roger Corman playing the government official that it was bullshit. That in fact this was bullshit. And I think in the movie there's some deleted scenes where Jack and Clarice, they got in a lot of trouble. And they ended up taking a lot of that out of the film.
Yeah, because he said he was going to roll the dice.
Yeah. And Hannibal is now in the mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Strapped to the gurney in that iconic Billy Crystal from the Oscars that year image. And apparently, by the way, they tried like hundreds of masks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like
that
hockey,
makes sense.
You know, like big mesh masks and steel masks.
The grill that he has when Chilton's interrogating him was terrifying enough. Like they could have done that again, but I understand wanting to crank it up another notch.
Yeah. It's fiberglass. They were talking about painting it, and then they finally was like, you know what, the raw fiberglass, that's just looks like it's good.
And it's the way it pushes up against his nose.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever had that kind of situation, like it's really an unsettling, trapped situation to feel. Yeah.
And as they're handing him over, Chilton's got to sign some papers. Where's my pen? Can't find my pen.
And there's the callback. Yeah.
And here comes the senator. And it's funny. I think this is not in the book. In the book, he just gives her some false information. And and in this, it was Demme who said, you know what? He's got this powerful woman here. Got to mess with her.
Yeah.
It's horrible what he does to her.
It is.
Not bite your own tongue off horrible, but still pretty bad.
Tell me, Senator, did you nurse Catherine yourself?
What?
Did you breastfeed her?
Now, wait a minute.
Yes, I did.
Toughened your nipples, didn't it?
Oh, son of a bitch.
Amputate a man's leg and he can still feel it tickling. Tell me, Mom, when your little girl is on the slab, where will it tickle you?
Take this thing back to Baltimore.
And her reaction is fantastic. Take this thing. Back to Baltimore. It's like, oh, jeez.
You know how many times I've said that in my life?
There are so many lines in this movie that are amazing. And this, I actually think, is probably Hannibal's best line in the whole movie.
Oh, and Senator, just one more thing. Love your suit.
Love your suit.
Love your suit.
And he twinkles his eyes. Oh my God.
And he has apparently given a whole bunch of information.
Yeah.
Did you believe him?
No.
I didn't.
No, I don't believe him at all. Chilton goes out to make a press conference, and this is where his true, we knew he was a horrible person through the whole film, but this is like the icing, the cherry, the top of like, oh my God, you're awful.
You're a shameless piece of dog shit.
Yeah. That is, I believe that says it on his business card. Dr. Chilton, shameless piece of dog shit.
And you know Chilton would be on all kind. He'd be on CNN and MSN. He'd be on all these shows right now if he was a real person.
Yeah. Good thing there aren't really people like this that do this kind of stuff.
Good point there, Steve.
Cautionary tale.
Starling somehow gets in to see Hannibal again.
Yeah, she does.
I
breaks through the defenses of whatever they've set up.
They really didn't put a lot into keeping her
Well, it's
out.
fantastic because she doesn't lie. It's again, he was like, oh, are you with Dr. Chilton? She's like, I just saw him outside.
That's right.
And that's enough for you to go see the most. Yeah, seems like the police fucked up a little bit on this one.
Well, I mean, they're not used to dealing with serial. I'm sure they're not used to these high-end security things. Yeah.
The set, by the way, that Hannibal's in, that cage in the middle of that room, amazing.
I completely agree. This is one of those things that should be absurd because it's absurd.
It's absurd. Why are you in this big room?
It's like like a VFW hall or whatever with just a cage erected in the middle of it. It's so over the top, but they've earned it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's like I'm complete. There's barbed wire.
Yeah.
There's barbed wire coming from the ceiling to the corners of the thing, and I'm perfectly fine with it.
Why would you have barbed wire hanging from a
I
ceiling
don't
to the
know.
corner? Like,
Honestly,
who is that preventing
it's
from
all
going
so
somewhere?
over the top. The only thing that bothers me about this scene is that Memphis cop's mustache, because it's so amazing that it's distracting. It goes across his entire face, and I love it. But it also takes me out of the moment because he's giving a lot of orders in very tense situations. I'm like, what is going on with your mustache?
Great accent too.
Yeah,
I mean,
oh
that
my
guy
God.
isn't authentic. That's
Yeah.
a great accent.
So
Who the hell went up that elevator? It's so great. Yeah.
So Hannibal and Clarice have the conversation. I don't know how she got his drawings, by the way. It seems like I don't know how she would have had access to them. But it doesn't really matter. And now we're going to find out about what the title means.
Right.
Because we're still in quid pro quo. And she has to make up, because she admits in this moment, not only was the offer bullshit, but she knew the offer was bullshit.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that is key. And on some level, I don't think he punishes her enough for this betrayal. I don't mean that he should kill her and eat her or anything,
Right.
but like he goes, okay, and she tells him the story of the lambs.
Yes.
And I want to come back to your idea, John, about this being a date.
Yeah.
This is the third date.
Yes.
And this is the third date, typically where things get serious.
Yeah, and
this
you
is
find
exactly you're in this moment where the Demi's
It's the fourth date.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, quid
Meets
pro
him-
quo was the third
meets
date.
him,
Oh, right.
He offers the deal.
Right.
She
Okay.
brings the deal.
All right, well, she's
Yeah.
a nice girl. She waits one more. But here's the thing: is the close-ups are. You've got his point of view of her, and she's for a Jonathan Demme close-up.
Yeah.
It's pretty. She's pretty far away. You can see through the bars, and she's back there a little bit.
Right.
And his close-ups are you can still see the bars, but they're pretty tight.
Yeah.
And then it's one of the only times in the movie where there's any sort of move on one of the close-ups. As she starts to tell the story, he pushes in on her.
And one morning I just ran away.
Not just, Clarice. What set you off? You started at what time?
Early, still dark.
Then something woke you, didn't it? Was it a dream? What was it?
I heard a strange noise.
What was it?
It was screaming. Some kind of screaming, like a child's voice.
What did you do?
I went downstairs, outside. I crept up into the barn. I was so scared to look inside, but I had to.
What did you see, Clarice? What did you see?
Lambs. They were screaming.
They were slaughtering the spring lambs?
They were screaming.
Yeah.
And so it's push until you can't see the bars anymore.
Yeah.
And now it's just her. He's only seeing her. And then the reverse is Lecter is even closer.
Yeah.
It's just over
Right.
the eyes, just under the mouth. And you can't see the bars on him. Now these two people see each other,
Right.
are completely there with each other.
Yep.
You still wake up sometimes, don't you? You wake up in the dark and hear the screaming of the lambs.
Yes.
And you think if you save poor Catherine, you could make them stop, don't you? You think if Catherine lives, you won't wake up in the dark ever again to that awful screaming of the lambs.
I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you, Clarice. Thank you.
And strange enough, you can see in this moment, I think, why he wanted to be a psychiatrist. You know what I mean? Like, is that he's getting her, he likes getting into people's most intimate stories, and he knows how to do it.
Yeah.
He knows how to ask the right questions and draw someone out. And this is payment. This story of the lambs is payment in the quid pro quo.
Right.
And he is about to tell her. What do you think? Well, let me ask that question. If Chilton hadn't come in and she wasn't going to get dragged out, would he have told her the answer?
No.
No,
I don't think so.
But here's the thing: he told her the answer because it's in the case file.
It's in
Right,
the case
it's
file.
in the case file.
Well, he gave her the big clue.
He gave her the big, yeah. But you're right. He wanted this is punishment, but this is also, like I said, this is consummation.
Right.
And he got what he wanted, and I think he was done with that.
And in particular, the finger touch. The
Yes.
little slide on that finger.
That's sexual.
Oh, no doubt. and dangerous and scary.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And creepy and intimate and
Right.
all sorts of weird stuff is going on there.
Right, and it's so perfect because she has to break free to run back and grab him, right? She can do that. She breaks free to run back and grab the case files and whatever and all that. And I think it's powerful in their relationship because you're right. This is for him. He already has a plan, so he's given her what he needs to give her, and then she's going to go off on her own. I think that's why he wouldn't tell her, because there is no accomplishment for her if he just hands it over.
Yes.
She has to do it herself to feel. It's his way of like educating her in a way or maturing her in a way. Like she has to do it on her own to feel that sense of accomplishment, to know that she's a good FBI agent.
Right,
And if she hadn't done it, if he had handed it to her, there's no sense of accomplishment.
But I also think, do you think if she hadn't visited him before he broke out, that he would have found a way to contact her?
Probably.
I think so.
Because he does at the end.
I mean,
Well,
speculative.
except that at that moment, she'd betrayed him. So he doesn't help her unless she tells the story of the land.
Exactly.
No, that's a good point.
Exactly.
Good
But I
point.
think he knows she betrayed him because she's under Crawford's
Sure.
direction.
I
So
think
there's
he
understanding
understands that.
there. But yeah.
All right. There's a phrase that comes from Blake Snyder, who wrote the Save the Cat books, which are screenwriting books. Which, if you're interested in being a screenwriter, you should definitely read them. There's things I love about them, things I don't love about them. But the one, which I guess is true of almost everything.
True.
But one of the things he talks about is something called the promise of the premise. And what the promise of the premise is that in every movie you're setting up a certain expectation, and sometime in your movie you better fucking deliver on it.
Yeah.
We've set up this expectation as Lecter as this genius, this maniacal, unbelievably dangerous, terrifying person, and this person we have seen do nothing but speak
Right.
through this whole film. It's time to deliver on the promise of the premise.
Yeah.
Let's see Lecter in action.
Oh man.
And wow.
does not disappoint.
It does not disappoint.
Right?
It is so amazing. And what's funny too is we've established this is a horrible person.
Yep.
And we I believe, feel joy.
Yeah.
In watching him be who he is supposed to be.
Yeah.
To become the ultimate, killer.
This is the shark coming out of the water with the chum moment with Scheider. We are Scheider shooting up into frame going, holy shit, because he is a monster.
Yeah.
And he is legitimately a monster, and a monster that where he says his heartbeat doesn't get above 80.
Yeah.
They set that premise up when Chilton is telling her about that woman that got killed, the nurse that got killed or got eaten by him. Yeah.
So our cops come in for his second dinner.
Charles Napier.
Yeah.
Love Charles Napier. to
Wonderful
pieces.
Charles Napier.
So great. Met him a couple times. What an amazingly
really?
awesome dude. Yes.
We have some very rare lamb chops. Just beautiful touch.
With
I love the
drawing.
comment. Was that?
The drawing of
Yes.
her holding the lamb
Oh.
that he must have just done. Amazing.
Yeah. And the cops are not great. No, they're a little distracted, but we see a lot of the details. We see the mace can, we see the handcuffs, we see how they're doing it. This beautiful classical music is playing.
Yeah.
Lecter moves very slowly, very nicely, puts his hands through the bars to be handcuffed. They come in. He needs them to move the drawings,
Mind
to
the
put
drawings,
the food down. He's very polite. He's very courteous.
God.
Courtesy is very important
But
to
also
him.
giving himself time to get the handcuffs.
And we
Very
see-
smart.
And we see that palmed. Takes out of his mouth the little piece of the pen, the little shaft. He's palmed it. He's sitting down. We see him clip it into the handcuffs. We don't actually see the handcuffs come off. And then there's this moment. Oh man, where he's suddenly free, and he handcuffs Napier to the cage, and the turn of fear on his face is amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
He tries to warn the other guys. It's too late. Slams the cage into him. The other guy jumps on the guy's face. Because, that's how you do it. That's how you scare a fucker. You just jump up and start to eat his face. I don't know what your reaction's going to be like, And then he starts slamming his head into the cage and kills that dude. And then he takes the club out. And, man, this is one of my favorite moments in the movie.
Oh, my God.
And I do it every once in a while when someone really irritates the shit out of me. I have this
You
vision of
club
going
it
like,
to death?
no, in my mind, I just go I like to be able to do that every once in a while.
And the look of that I can only describe as rapture.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only word that describes the feeling that Lecter is going through at this moment with the classical music in the background. And he takes his time and he just enjoys this horrific, awful act.
It's sexual.
It is. It is. And in a weird way, we enjoy it with him.
Yeah.
That is what's so, like, Chilton we hate.
Yes.
But this guy we've come to love as he does the most horrible thing to these innocent cops.
Right.
You know?
Right. We should feel bad for these cops, but
don't.
But we're shown that they're not taking the appropriate measures, appropriate precautions.
Apparently.
And it's sort of like you got what you deserved. You don't go into the tiger's cage and poke the tiger.
You don't spit in the wind.
But Lecter still's got to get out of here.
Yeah, he does.
And he has a plan.
By the way, and I love this. I love when he hears the other cops struggling, and he looks for what it
he just looks around. It's so perfect,
right? It disturbs his post-coital moment.
Oh, you're so right.
And then he goes, "Oh, what can I use now? Damn it! What can I use now?" Oh, and he finds the knife and he goes, "Ready when you are, Officer Pembrey."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it just scares the shit out of you, man.
Terrifying.
Nothing unsettles him. Nothing unsettles him, man.
And there's some cops downstairs, and they hear some noises, and the elevator's acting weird.
Right.
So we got to go up to the room, and that image of coming into this space.
Yeah.
Again, this is a thing that's over the top.
Way over the top.
And it's how could he possibly have gotten a body up there? He couldn't. This is one of those.
And strung
exactly
the whatever
the banners.
Yeah.
It's like, who would have taken the time to by yourself somehow yank up a body? Were there ropes? What did he do? I don't know what he did. He did it with the banners, and yet at this point,
you buy anything.
It's such a great visual, and you've built up so much credit with me. I'm like, yes, okay.
And he's disemboweled.
Because, like you said, he finally, this is a man who's been dying of thirst forever, and he finally gets to the water. And he's like,
He takes a big drink.
I am taking the biggest drink.
Well, and he's strangely godlike.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
His powers seem to be superhuman.
And part of his plan is to terrify these people. So
Oh,
they
yeah.
have to be distracted enough by that body that they won't notice Officer Pembrey is really, really fucked up.
Well, and by the way, that first image comes very much, they were looking at paintings from Francis Bacon. Oh. And if you look at Francis Bacon paintings,
Okay.
Right. Yeah, check it out.
It's an image that has stayed
pass.
with me.
Yeah.
It's an image that has stayed with me since the first time I saw the movie.
So poor Officer Pembrey, his face is all bloody.
Yeah.
He's still alive. We have this young cop.
The little blood bubble.
Yeah.
He's still breathing.
And
Just
what
a
do I
little
do?
blood
Hold
bubble.
his hand. That's Pembrey. You have to take care of him.
It's Officer Pembrey.
Jim Pembrey, damn it.
And
I love that guy.
They're rushing us to the hospital. The hospital
Right.
guys are there. Get him on a gurney. We're going to save his life. We still haven't. Where the hell is Lecter? Right. Oh, we're sitting in the elevator as the gurney goes away, and there's a drip of blood. And I love that, again, pretty good cop doesn't say anything on the radio that he's on, and like whispers, and we think we got him. We look down, and there he is. There's Lecter in his beautiful tailored prison suit, face down on the top of the elevator. So what do? They pulled a bullet in his leg. No reaction.
Right.
And we go into the elevator. We're going to open up the hatch at the top, and the body flies out. And just as the body flies out, we cut into the ambulance.
Yep.
Yeah. You don't see the face on the body. The body just flops down.
And they're working on the body in the ambulance.
Right.
And then, the guy turns away. The body sits up.
Yeah.
Removes the skin from his face.
I don't even know what to say about that. It's so perfect and maybe the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life at that point.
Because he's been built up to that, but you feel so bad for these people in the in the ambulance, and so there are a lot of innocent victims that this guy goes after.
But again, they don't show you.
Yeah, no, they don't.
He just pulls the face off, and then they cut again to Ardelia dropping the phone and running, and it's like he killed the whole crew.
He wiped him out.
By the way, that's Chris Isaac as one of the main cops.
Oh, that's
with the SWAT team guy.
Yeah,
Chris
SWAT team
Isaac.
guy. Yeah, that's Chris Isaac. One of his first roles.
So now we have Starling and her friend, and they're going through this idea of this random map. And we finally realize it's got something to do with the first victim. Maybe the first victim wasn't random. So we go back to investigate the first victim.
Bimmel.
Frederica
Bimmel.
Frederica Bimmel.
Great name, by the way, yeah.
So we go to Frederica Bimmel's house. We go up to the room, and she's looking around, and this is where she has the realization.
It's such a good reveal.
It's a dress.
Yeah, because she opens the closet door and is looking in the closet, but it's hanging on the door, so her body is blocking it, and she looks over. She moves away. You don't see it till she sees it and moves away, and then you see the darts on the back of the dress.
Yep. And one of the things that happens throughout this film has amazing sound design, is that whenever we're dealing with things with Bill, there is the little sound of wings.
Yes.
Throughout the film. And
Great
this
point,
moment
Steve.
we're in looking at that dress,
Yep.
you know, we hear that sound. And are there anything that are making wing sounds there? No. And you don't. And this is, you know, so much of a film is subconscious, is hitting you on a level that you're not intellectually understanding.
Right.
And sound is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
So she calls up Crawford and says, I've got some information. And he says, don't worry, we know where he is.
Yeah.
We're going to get him.
By the way, I want to take a ride one day in a plane like that. I love those awesome military planes like that. They're so fucking cool.
So they got the name, but they're going off to get him in Chicago. Well, why don't you poke around here?
Right.
What could go wrong?
But he does give her a great compliment because he says, we wouldn't have found him without you.
Absolutely.
And that's like his way of making up for embarrassing her in front of the sheriffs.
Now, I have a question, because this is a moment that also confused me when I first saw it, and still confuses me to this day. The picture that he shows, is that Buffalo Bill? He thinks they've got the right guy.
Right.
Tells her all the backstory about the caterpillars coming in from Suriname, and then he has a picture, and it looks enough like the guy to think maybe it is, but I don't know if it is or not.
Well,
which I guess is what you're supposed to think.
Yeah, and they got the name right. They do everything about it is right, except
I don't know if they have the picture. I don't
location.
know if the pictures are. My gut is that the picture is right from just like an earlier time where it didn't look so crazy.
Well, what do you think about her finding the pictures in the music box of herself in these grandma panties of Bimmel in these? Like, do you think that's leads her into that idea that's because she says he knew her. He knew her.
Yeah,
Right?
I think Bill took those pictures.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. It's not explicitly said.
No.
But that's what I think.
Right, and they're perfect because you feel so painful for her because you see that's not something she is like naturally doing.
Just
She's
so
trying
vulnerable.
To be, she's trying to be sexual, but she's
Right.
uncomfortable doing it. Yeah.
So we're back to Bill, and we have this scene where Catherine's got a plan.
Yeah.
And while Catherine has a plan to get this fucking little dog.
Yeah.
Which I love dogs, but man, this dog I'm not a fan of. Generally, a serial killer's dog is not going to be my thing.
No.
And simultaneous with that is Bill's dance.
Yeah. Oh, another iconic.
There are very few moments that I can remember being in the theater. I remember being in a theater full of people when that happened, sitting next to my college girlfriend and my brother and my sister-in-law, and being like, what the fuck did I just see?
It's true.
The whole theater stopped. You could feel everybody thinking the same thing. Like, holy shit, did I just see that?
Yeah.
By the way, this is 1991.
Yeah.
Transsexual stuff like right there in your face. It's so amazing. We're still having these arguments in 2017 about transsexuals, and it's so creepy. It's so crazy. Tucks. You know, everybody jokes about tucking in your balls or whatever you dig, and then you look like and he literally, because he's in so lithe and in such great shape, it works. You actually
and the
kind
drapery
of visually
of the fabric.
Yes,
It works
and the nipple
so
rings,
well.
like all of it. You're just like, ooh.
And again, we're in this really disturbing, intense moment,
Right.
and we cut to another moment of almost not comic, but
Right.
she's talking to this girl. It's very light about her
Oh, yeah,
friend
yeah.
and sewing.
Girl with
and,
the terrible bangs.
and
at
that
the
leads
bank.
us to hear about Mrs. Lipman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now we're really going to build into the climax.
Yep.
Bill goes to get another moth larva, which is the sign that it's going to be over.
Yeah.
And by the way, you have to get a moth trainer
Yep.
if you're making this movie. You have to find the right moths. Those are real moths.
Oh, yeah.
They say they didn't harm any of them. I don't worry that much about moths, but what they did do is they had to have a moth room.
Yeah.
And they put the moth larva in the freezer to slow them down because they're cold-blooded, didn't, he says, hurt them. And then that way, as they're warming up, they start to really move.
Oh, wow.
So you have to think through these things.
I guess so.
When you're making a movie.
Details.
And by this point, Catherine's got his dog.
Right.
That's pretty brave. Like,
Right.
that's pretty, like, resourceful. And
Yeah. She's an angry girl, that Catherine. I mean, I get the situation you're in, but she's like, you stupid. And even when Clarice comes there, she's like, don't you leave, you fucking bitch. Like, she's an angry woman,
I
man.
love that. And we get to this standoff of she's going to kill the dog.
Yeah.
And the thing that stops that is that we have the
The doorbell.
Yeah, the doorbell.
Right.
And this
The
is what we
worst
got to talk
doorbell
about.
in history.
So that doorbell, talk about sound design.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know. It's. I think there's
Who's ever
sounds
been
of.
scared by a doorbell? I have, from that movie.
I think there's sounds of human screaming in that doorbell.
I wouldn't be
There's
surprised.
like mechanical grounding
probably,
metal sounds. There's, I mean, it is awful.
electric sounds too from the
And what the doorbell is from, of course, is the guy with the flowers.
Or so we think.
Who's ringing the doorbell, and there's a huge crowd of FBI guys with all their weapons, and Crawford's there, and the doorbell rings again, and he goes, "Oh, I got to go answer the door," and so he leaves the Catherine and his dog. He gets his big gun.
Yeah.
He goes to the door. He opens the door. It's Clarice.
Yeah. I'm sure that's been done before that, but like you've seen it done so many times since then, and it was so perfect.
It is one of the most remarkable moments in film history, I think, because you're 100% thinking this is one thing.
Yes.
And the moment of, oh shit, it's just her, is amazing.
Well, it's brilliant filmmaking, right? Because there's so many swerves in this film. We, as human beings, want to believe there's a happy resolution around the corner. And so we have this dread in this moment when the doorbell rings, and we think they're going to bust through,
Right.
what's going to happen, and so we're excited. And then when we see it's Clarice, we're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're like, oh my
no.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Right, exactly. Oh, no.
Well, and because it has convinced us that it's going to be this other thing.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they originally cut it linearly.
Oh.
Isn't that it's shocking to that's what look, I'm
Thank
just
God.
reporting what they said in some behind the scenes. Yeah, the first cut was linear, and then Demme says, "No, we have to intercut this."
No, yeah.
I mean, like I just always assumed that it was intentional in the filmmaking. I think it might not have been.
Oh my God.
That's amazing to me.
That's a happy accident. Exactly.
Yes. And so now we're just with, and we see the FBI guys break into an empty house, and now we're just with Starling and Buffalo Bill in this house.
And Scott Glenn's reaction is our reaction.
Yeah.
When he says Clarice.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
And one of the rare moments that he calls her Clarice.
Yeah.
Right? At
That's
that
right. He
moment-
calls her Starling every other time. You're
Exactly.
right. That's a great point.
Yeah. And this house, again, production design.
Yeah.
Dingy and creepy and smelly. You know that house smells.
Oh yeah, you get as soon as she walks in that house, you get everything about it.
It's a hoarder's house, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then she
unsettling as
starts
hell.
looking around.
Yeah.
And it's that moment when the moth lands on the
Thread,
thread,
yeah.
and her eyes are like, "Oh, all right then."
Well, and this is the thing. So there's a Hitchcock thing which talks about like, is that where is the audience with knowledge in relationship to your characters? I
Right.
think we talked about this before.
Yes.
Is that the audience can be with the characters in the film, they can be ahead of the characters in the film or behind, and that Hitchcock really loved the audience knows that there's a bomb under the floor,
Right.
but the characters don't, and that's where the tension comes from. And sometimes we're right with we're right with them. This movie does all of them,
Right.
and this is a moment where we know we're ahead, and then we watch her catch up. And it's particularly that moment with the moth.
Right.
And what's interesting, too, is there's this moment he's continuing to say, "Oh, let me get you this card." And they're having this conversation. Her realization is dawning. He is knowing that she is beginning to know. Right. And there's this moment of them looking at each other.
This is one of the creepiest moments in all of film for me.
Yeah.
Is that moment where he turns to her, here's the card, and he can't control his mirth.
Yes.
And he has
That's
to
a
cover
great
his
word.
mouth to hide his smile. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. And because they did the great thing of already showing you the reverse through the kitchen where his gun is sitting on the stove.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, this guy is ready to play.
Yeah.
Well, because he's going like, "You're not buying this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you're not buying this, and you know, and I know.
Right.
It is so...
Well, because he has hunted women. So he knows the look on their face when they're legitimately buying his bullshit or when they're scared or when they're seeing through him.
Sure.
And so when he sees that look, like initially, he's like, oh, he's playing her or whatever. And then when she has that moment, he knows by the look, which is why the mirth is great. That and the Christopher Walken moment of True Romance when he's like, the idiot left his license in the dead guy's hand. There's a mirth in the stupidity, right? And so in his mind, he's like, oh, let's have some fun. Right?
That was the moment for me when I'm like, this guy's never going to get work again.
That's right.
That was his perfect moment.
Because it doesn't seem like acting. It
No,
seems
right.
like just you embodied this monster.
I love him throwing the cards. Like cards, like it's
Oh yeah,
none of
some
this
of them start to
matters.
drop. Yeah,
And and there's a really interesting choice, which is just as this action sequence is starting, I think, we cut out to the train tracks, and the house, and the empty, quiet town.
Yeah.
And there's something about that I think is so brilliant, because it's the quietness. It's the feeling that all of these horrible things are happening under the surface of this town, and they've happened before, and awful, and nobody knows.
Yep.
That's such a great point.
And nobody's going to come to help you.
Right.
You're on your own.
Yeah, this is happening somewhere right now.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, this is the terror of this film.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the like I was thinking watching this film is that Silence of the Lambs is to serial killers as Jaws is to sharks.
Yeah.
Which is that we weren't thinking about serial killers. There have always been them.
Yeah.
There are not that many of them. They're not really a major threat. They're more of a threat to us than sharks are. But they're not really a major threat to humans. But since this film, we think about it.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It just, the idea that it could be your neighbor.
And Dahmer solidified it. I think Dahmer solidified that more. I mean, because Ted Bundy had come along in the 70s, obviously, but people like kind of wrote off the 70s as like, well, that was the nutty time.
Everybody had a van back then.
Exactly.
Who knew he was
nuts.
abducting who?
But this is when Silence of the Lambs and then the Dahmer thing right after solidified it completely. Yeah.
Dahmer's, I mean, they're all fucking scary. But that one in particular is very disturbing.
Well,
to me.
Ed Gein is the worst.
Ed,
also from Wisconsin.
Oh, Ed Gein.
Yeah, but I mean that's who Buffalo Bill's based on.
Yes.
And Psycho is based on.
And
Texas Chainsaw Massacre to a certain extent.
Okay, so again, we see really Starling do the thing that she's done throughout, which is she is really, really scared, and she is keeping it together right at the edge. And I love I'm the FBI. You're going to be okay.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's fumbling through it. She fumbles the draw on her gun, but still gets it out.
Right.
She's
a trainee.
Yes, exactly. That's all of the vulnerability is there, but so is the strength.
Determination to see through.
Yeah.
She could run out. Go to a
Right.
payphone.
Yeah, she could have just
Jack.
left.
Yep.
She could have just left, but no, she knows her duty is to do the job. You know.
Well, and that girl might be alive.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and Catherine yelling at her.
Oh my God.
It's great. It's such.
It's
And
the
it's so real.
perfect just enough of a release of tension.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't completely release it, but it eases it just enough. Like, don't you leave me, you bitch! It's like, yes, that's exactly what you would say.
and now Starling's in the maze.
Yeah.
Trying to find the
boy.
monster. And seeing her react to the space that she's been in and the chaos of it and the winding turns and what door. And you get the feeling he could come from anywhere.
Yeah.
There's doors in front of you, behind you, wherever it is. And of course, then the lights go out.
Yeah.
Right after she sees Mrs. Lippman in the bathtub.
Oh, that's right.
The perfect time for the lights to go out. Busts into the room. I don't even know the right word. Putrefying isn't strong enough.
Yeah.
Putrefying corpse in the bathtub. Lights out.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, I'm in a room with a dead corpse.
Right.
Yeah. That's definitely soiling your pants kind of moment. And at this point, I had forgotten about the night goggles.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't, and then the night goggles come on, and you're just like, "Oh, she's fucked."
I just love the sound.
Again,
man.
sound design. Poing.
Yep. Such a great creepy sound, man. Because they don't make that sound that loud. Like it does not come like that.
Why does Bill take so long?
Because he can. Because he enjoys the chase and he enjoys fucking with it. Like the whole thing of like coming his hand close. That's his way of like asserting
he thinks he's in
power.
total
It's almost
control.
like this guy's not right in his head.
Well, yeah, and also the feminism of the movie.
Yes.
He sees
He
her
feels-
as inferior.
yeah.
I of course this is my space.
Yes.
I have control. She's just a woman.
Yeah, and he pulls back the hammer on that gun,
Yeah.
and that's it for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the shot when we come back to the light, because he shoots
so
out
great.
the window, and
Yes.
there he is on the ground, blood, bubbling out of his mouth, his last breath, and she's won.
Right.
And he looks exactly like a bug.
Yeah.
He's got he's a
Yeah.
moth. He's got the antennae poking out of his face.
That's a great
His
point.
arms are clenched up like a bug when they fold over themselves, and he's lying on a little mat that looks like moth wings.
That's
Wow.
It's
fantastic.
fucking amazing.
That I never ever occurred to me.
Neither did
That's
I.
awesome.
That's great, Dave. And I love that she reloads. Like she's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
just
yeah.
in case.
Training.
This is
Training.
training, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And the spinning, whatever that thing is, of the two,
the
two
wind
butterflies
chimey
coming
thing,
together,
yeah.
and then the big as if it's been swallowed.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
so
yeah, yeah.
intense, man.
Yeah.
I love that little spinning thing that they did.
And then we have our moment of aftermath as we're
Yeah.
coming out. And I just love, it's a small detail again, Catherine's still holding that dog.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Yes.
I think that's
She
just
won't give
so
it up.
smart.
and still angry.
I think she's going to be angry for
Every
a long
right.
time.
Every right.
So we have graduation in the midst of like having a nice little talk with Crawford.
Yes.
And by the way, the FBI has beautiful cakes. I
They
don't know if
really
you noticed
do.
that. That's
Biggest
a lovely
piece of cake that's ever been sliced on film. I love that piece of cake that she
Have you
cuts.
researched that?
Maybe.
And but you got a phone call.
Yeah.
Let's go take the phone call. Hello, Clarice.
Which again, you've forgotten. I
Yes.
don't know how you could have forgotten Hannibal Lecter,
Yeah.
but everything that happened with Bill, you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. And they're like, oh my God, that's right.
And then one of the great final lines of film of all time. I'm having a friend for dinner.
That's just great. Not over for dinner.
For dinner.
It's just brilliant.
And we see Chilton get off this plane,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then we have an extremely long credit shot.
I love that credit
where
shot.
he just sort of does he saunter?
Yes,
That's
that's
a-
a
that's a
great word
perfect
for
word.
it.
Like I said, like what is that walk that he does? It's so relaxed.
Yeah.
It's so languid. It's so easy and happy. And again, you're kind of happy for him.
Yeah.
Because you fucking hate Chilton.
Yeah, you do.
And you're weirdly rooting for this serial killer in this
Yeah.
last moment of this
Yeah.
film.
Yeah, you're left feeling like all is right in the world. Bill, she got Bill, and he gets Chilton.
Right, and both her father figures give her a final message. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Scott Glenn with Crawford right before, because Casey Lemons comes and says, you got a phone call. But for whatever reason, Crawford takes that moment when she's supposed to go pick up
Right.
the phone to have this conversation with her, and then she goes and has the final moment with
That's a good point.
with
Yeah,
Lecter.
back to
Lecter's
back,
sitting
which is
on
great.
hold on that payphone. For a long time. I don't know what person to person from the Bahamas is.
They didn't even have prepaid cards back in
That's
'91.
that's right. And I love I love that Chilton's like, in security, you got the security. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have the security all set up. You're fine.
Chilton's so frazzled.
Yeah, he is, because he knows.
Even though he's in
this
like
guy's coming
Dominican
for him.
Republic or
Right,
something, he's
right.
still frazzled. And rightly so.
And I love that terrible wig. I love that terrible wig. It's perfect.
Well, the Panama hat,
Yeah,
and the
the
whole,
whole nine,
the
man.
linen suit.
this
It's
linen
just-
suit is so brilliant.
Okay, so the movie, obviously, it was released as like a February release.
Yeah.
It's the biggest February release of all time. I don't know if it still is, but it was for a long time. And it was a thriller. It wasn't expected to be like an Oscar contender.
Right.
It is the only February release to win the Oscar. It sweeps the Academy Awards.
Yep.
It wins,
Big five.
Yeah, Best Picture, Actor, Actress, Director, Screenplay.
Yep.
Which is one of only 3 films to have done that. The other
It happened one night.
It happened one night, and
One flew over the cuckoo's
and
nest.
Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah.
Yep.
By the way, Dave is the best at trivia of anyone I know. Just so.
What did you just say?
In general trivia,
General trivia.
not movie trivia.
Okay.
No, in general trivia,
I've had 2 belts that tell me I'm pretty good at trivia.
Wow,
Oh,
movie
my
things just
God.
got real tense.
Yeah. In movie trivia, I'm making no statement. In general trivia, I bet on Dave.
Look, I'm happy that Dave Rapp is here, but let's not get go overboard.
Not insult a man on his own
Please,
show.
for God's sakes, I've had 2 belts. Anyway, go ahead. Yes.
Well, that distracted me a little bit. So it swept the Oscars.
Yes.
But there is one thing that we need to talk about, which is there was a controversy, which is from the what we would call today the LGBTQ community.
Oh, yeah.
There was very, very strong protests about the portrayal of Buffalo Bill and what at the time they called transsexual, would maybe call it transgender today. And it was a big protest. And the reason for the protest is the portrayal of this man as this serial killer and the use of these gender identity issues as part of it. And one thing let me ask first.
Yep.
So how do you feel about this? And part of this is it's 2017 and
Right. Well, here's my feeling. I didn't understand the controversy because Lecter says he is not a standard transsexual.
He's not a real
He's not a real transsexual. He's something else, right?
Right.
He's trying to be something else because he hates who he is. He's been kind of like manipulated to hate who he is. So he thinks this is the way out, but it's not authentic. And that's what he says. And they even go, and the FBI says, this is behavior that we don't see from trans. Like even Clarice Starling says, like this is not typical behavior from transsexuals. They're nice. They're passive. They don't. So. To me, they completely addressed it in the movie, which is why I didn't understand the controversy, to be honest with you.
See, for me, that is such a good example because I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, and I don't think it succeeds.
Okay.
Now, I love the movie. It's not a criticism of the movie, but it goes to this thing we've talked about a lot, which is this idea of show don't tell, which is that if you tell, we always want to show the audience things, have them emotionally involved in something rather than just tell them information. And this shows how it can work against you because we have all these things showing us his behavior as transgender or transsexual, but then we have characters in the movie tell us that he's not. And the power of the images and his movement and the dance that he does and all that stuff really erases, I think, the statement from Lecter, oh, he's not a real transsexual. For me.
A good point.
Okay.
What do you think?
I tend to agree with John. I think they did their best to address it and show that, you know, this is a man who's so confused because he hates himself. He thinks he must be something else. I found that idea very powerful. Yeah. And also the idea that it is based on a real guy. That, you know, Ed Gein had so many mother issues that he killed his mother and stuffed her and then tried to make a woman suit out of, like, I don't know what was going on in the guy's head, but, like, this is something that actually happened. You know, Buffalo Bill's not a real guy, but I think there are enough things. I think they did their best. I can understand being upset by it as a community, but you know, I think the movie went, I wouldn't say out of the way, but tried to address it and make sure that it was shown that this is not indicative of any real member of the community, but I don't know. Maybe I love the movie too much.
Yeah, well, it's a great movie. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, well, like, it never registered to me that he's a transsexual. It registered to me that he's a serial killer.
Right.
It never registered. But once again, I'm not a transsexual. I am a Latino, and sometimes I will watch certain films, and even though they try to explain away or it still bothers me. So I can understand the argument. I understand the offense. I just, as a person who watched the film, I never consider him a transsexual.
So here, because I was thinking about this a lot, and is that the first thing I always think is that I am for freedom of expression and freedom of the artist.
Of course.
And I don't like the world coming in and saying, oh, you can't do that.
Right.
And I always think that whenever we come to these issues of representation, it's not that you shouldn't have an Arab terrorist or that you shouldn't have a African-American mugger or you shouldn't have whatever negative cliche about a particular group.
Latino game gardener.
Or gangbanger. Is that the problem is when those are the only images on screen.
Sure.
So is that if you have a wide range of images and one of them are, you know, this negative portrayal, that's fine. If we only see negative portrayals, that's a problem. So at this time, there are not a lot of images of transgender characters on the screen. And the second thing about this that makes it kind of particularly problematic, I think, and again, I love the film, but is that at that time, and definitely still today, there is an image for a lot of people in the world of people with these kind of gender issues as that there's something deviant about this. And you can see in the political climate today that people are saying, oh, well, we couldn't let someone in the bathroom because they would obviously be rapists. Right. You know, there's a connection, an immediate connection between this, you know, being LGBTQ and being deviant or evil or something like that. And this movie uses that. There's no question that the disturbingness of his dance is used to support his monstrousness as a serial killer. It's tying into those fears that we have. And there's no question in my mind that it's doing it. It's doing it really well. And again, if there had been hundreds of wonderful representations of transgender people at this time, it wouldn't stand out. But as this is one of the very few representations at this time, you know, like I think... you know, and it's like just as we talk about with a lot of films, is that you have to judge films for where they are at their time, and you know, Thomas Jefferson, you know, wrote the Declaration of Independence and had slaves. It's like we need to be complicated in the way that we look at things. And we could say that this is a great film, and we can also kind of go on, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And there's one story that's really important that I want to tell, which is they're at the New York City Film Critics Awards, and this movie's getting an award, and there's a protest. And at the protest, they're handing out these flyers that talk about, you know, transgender rights and information about it. And Jonathan Demme gets up to give his big speech, and he says, hey, I don't know if you noticed that someone's handing out flyers here, and I really think you should read it, because I think they've done a really graceful job of making this point, and this is so important, and Hollywood has done a terrible job of representing these issues, and we should take a look at it.
That's great.
And that is amazing.
That's awesome.
And what is the next movie he makes? Philadelphia.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just think that's so, and this is why, while I didn't have a whole bunch of stories to tell about Jonathan Demme, I really like him. And other thing I want to say about this film is that everything I heard, you know, we talked about a lot of movies where there's a lot of problems. We talked about Apocalypse Now and The Shining and all these things. We talked about a lot of directors who are tyrants and difficult and everyone had a great time on this movie.
That's not a surprise.
You know, even though they're dealing with heavy stuff,
Yeah.
they all liked each other, they're all having fun, and you can do it. You can make a great film and care about each other and not be abusive, and it's just so important for me to say that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so David,
Yes.
final thoughts on The Silence of the Lambs.
I'll never stop loving this movie. You gave me a lot to think about there at the end, and I totally agree. And I think if this movie came out in the current climate, people would have every right to say it's sensationalizing a hot button topic. At the time, that didn't occur to me. For me, I love this movie so much because it's almost perfect. It's one of those movies. It's so close. There's a lack of diversity that I have a problem with in the movie, especially that it's only the black guys that get sent into trouble.
Right,
Opening up the elevator roof shaft and
box of flowers,
ringing on the door with a
right.
box of flowers. Let's send in the black guy, and like everybody else is white. That's a problem for me. But like this movie is just so close to being perfect in every way that I can watch it, and even though it's so deep, psychological thriller, but haunting.
Yeah,
it's a haunting movie, and yet it's a movie like Shawshank or something else that if it comes on TNT, if it comes on anything, if I turn to it, I'm going to watch it from wherever I watched it and watch it all the way through and be happy that I did. Yeah. And that's not something that you can say about, I can say about any other psychological thriller.
Yeah. What about you?
I think it's a fantastic film, and it was great to revisit it. So, because I haven't seen it in a while, to revisit it for this show and talk about it on the show. I think what stands out for me this time, and it's really amazing, and maybe it's because I've been around more women as pundits in this business that I'm walking into as a host and a guest on shows and what have you. It's really interesting how Jonathan Demme does not play any of his women as victims. None of them.
No, it's true.
Clarice Starling, the senator, Catherine Ardelia, I think that's her name.
Yeah.
All of the women in the film, even the friend of Catherine is just very defiant about her job at the bank.
Right.
Like no woman is played as a sad sack or some kind of like emotional thing. Even when she has her breakdowns and crying, which you see in films with women sometimes. You saw it with Sigourney. We see it with other very strong characters. It's done and it's effective and it makes her human. It doesn't make her weak, and that's really important. I think Demme does a great job with all his films with his female characters. Married to the Mob, same thing. Michelle Pfeiffer, same thing. Something Wild with Melanie Griffith, one of her greatest works, if not her best work as an actress. This Side of Nobody's Fool, and I thought this film did a great job with that. And it was watching with 2017 eyes, a 1991 film, and it still holds up. It still works. It's still effective. The acting is still powerful. The scenes are so well written, and overall, it's a well-deserving Best Picture Oscar winning film. And I challenge anybody to denigrate the film in any way that's effective or correct, because I think it's one of the most tightly written scripts, and every scene leads to something else. There is no wasted scene in the entire movie, and it's a masterclass of filmmaking. And like you said, Stephen, even the sound design, and like you said, Dave, the set design, all these things, and the score, Howard Shore's, all of it combined to create an effective film that is exactly what Dave said, still haunts you even now, watching it almost 30 years later.
Totally agree, and I think we said so much about the acting, about the filmmaking. So all I'm going to do is say this. So I watched the film with my wife. My office is in a garage that's attached from my house. I said goodnight to her. I went to do a little bit of work. It's like 11 at night. The sound, there's a railway yard across the way, so sometimes that's real loud, and there's loud train noises. There's a freeway, lots of freeway noise. It was windy that night. And I went into my dark office, and I was scared. I've been in that office a million times. I've never been scared. But that night I was scared.
Of course.
That's the power of this film. So that's what we think of The Silence of the Lambs. We'd love to hear what you think of The Silence of the Lambs. Please visit us on our Facebook page at the Cine-Files, CINE-FILES. Subscribe to us on Stitcher if you're on an Android phone. Subscribe to us on iTunes if you're on an iPhone. If you're on iTunes, why don't you leave us a message? We'd love to hear what you think. They help us a lot. You could subscribe to us on YouTube. I love looking at your comments on YouTube. If you want to reach me, you can always reach me at Twitter as SR Morris. John, where can they reach you?
You guys can always reach me at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and on Instagram. The Outlaw Nation podcast every Thursday on the SK Plus network, and every Friday on Collider Movie Talk at 11 a.m.
And Dave, do you do the social media things?
I do not. You cannot reach me unless you're walking around LA and you see a guy with a weird mohawk.
Yeah. So if you want to reach Dave, you can always reach us. We'll get the message to him.
That's right.
Maybe he'll respond. Dave, it's been so great having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I love talking about this movie.
Awesome.
And this is fantastic.
I'm so glad you gave us that 10 p.m.
10 p.m. text.
text. I'm really glad you added so much to the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Agreed.
All right, so that's it for this week. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.